Hello, I want to immigrate. Shen Xinyan stood at the window, handing all the prepared documents to the staff member on the other side. Soon, the staff member stamped the corresponding seals on the documents she had submitted, then pulled out another form and handed it to her. Madam, the procedures will be completed in 15 days. Please wait patiently. Shen Xinyan nodded and turned to walk out the door, but suddenly, the murmurs of the staff behind her reached her ears. Did I see that right? Why would Mrs. Zhu come for immigration? Did she have a fight with Mr. Zhu? Even if they had a fight, it shouldn't be this serious, right? After all, Mr. Zhu is famously known as a doting husband. What could have happened to make Mrs. Zhu so resolute? Exactly, 5 years ago, Mr. Zhu's grand wedding for Mrs. Zhu shocked the world. Even someone like me who doesn't go online heard about it. 3 years ago, Mrs. Zhu was in a car accident, and the blood bank was running low. Mr. Zhu, despite everyone's objections, drained more than half of his own blood to snatch her back from the jaws of death. A year ago, when Mrs. Zhu disappeared for just an hour, Mr. Zhu mobilized all media to search for her worldwide. Now, if Mrs. Zhu leaves like this without telling him, wouldn't he go mad? Listening to the discussions around her, Shen Xinyan curled her lips slightly, but the self-mockery in her eyes grew increasingly intense. Yes, everyone knew just how much Zhu Yushan loved her. It was common knowledge in their circle that Zhu Yushan, the CEO of Zhu Corporation, was ruthless and decisive in business, with a reputation for being cold and indifferent in his personal life, aloof from women, keeping them all at least 3 meters away, until that banquet, when he met Shen Xinyan. He fell in love with her at first sight and began pursuing her madly, showering her with mansions, luxury cars, and jewelry without hesitation. Fireworks lit up the sky for 3 days and nights, proclaiming his love to the world. When she casually mentioned craving chestnut cakes that had been discontinued for years, he braved a snowstorm late at night, driving through 3 cities until he was soaked to the bone, only to present her with the still warm pastries. What truly made her decide to accept him was the day her parents died in a car accident. Despite being in a distant city, he chose to abandon a billion-dollar deal just to rush back to her. When he arrived before her, disheveled and with bloodshot eyes, he pulled her into his arms, his heart aching for her. Yang Yang, be good, you still have me. I'll always be by your side. Shen Xinyan's heart skipped a beat as she gazed into the deep affection in his eyes. He's the one. Shen Xinyan silently made this decision in her heart. Yet this very person, whose heart was supposed to be hers alone, succumbed to temptation 3 months ago and became entangled with the sister of his best friend, who was staying at their home. The traces of their affair were everywhere, on the sofa in the villa, in the kitchen, and even on their bed. Zhu Yushan thought he had kept it all hidden perfectly, but he forgot that walls have ears. The moment she learned the truth, she was overwhelmed with pain, despair, and disbelief. In the end, she accepted the heartbreaking reality and decided to leave for good. The Zhu family has a 3-generation military background, so none of the Zhu family members are allowed to travel abroad, including Zhu Yushan. If she goes abroad, he will never find her in this lifetime. Shen Xinyan carefully packed the immigration documents in her hand, hailed a taxi, and headed towards Linjiang Garden. As soon as she stepped into the Zhu family villa, the scent of rhododendrons rushed straight to her nose. The 2 people hanging decorations on the wall turned to look at her as soon as they heard the movement. Zhu Yushan froze for a moment, then his eyes instantly softened as he walked over and took her hand. Sweetheart, why are you dressed so lightly? Aren't you cold? Didn't you say you were going out with your girlfriends? How come you're back so soon? I was still preparing a surprise for you. Surprise? Shen Xinyan looked up at Zhu Yushan, but her gaze involuntarily lingered on his neck. There, a large patch of hickeys was visible. Her eyelashes trembled slightly as she struggled to suppress the stabbing pain in her heart. Seeing she didn't respond, Chu Yaro nearby giggled and walked over. Xinyanjie, Yushanju really loves you so much. Even your first meeting anniversary is celebrated with such grandeur. Chu Yaro deliberately paused, then pointed at the mountain of gifts piled on the nearby sofa. Look, all these are gifts Yushanji prepared for you. Shen Xinyan followed Chu Yaroiro's hand and looked. but first noticed the spreading water stain beneath the pile of gifts. In that instant, she felt as if struck by lightning. The scent she had noticed upon entering and the traces before her now completely confirmed the truth she had just guessed. Love her. Zhu Yushen's so-called love for her was to prepare gifts for her while indulging in passion with Chu Yaro on the sofa, even to the point of soaking a large area of it. The pain of being torn apart from the inside is nothing compared to this. Zhu Yushen didn't notice Shen Xinyan's unusual behavior. He simply placed the necklace he had prepared earlier around her neck, his voice so tender it could almost drown one in sweetness. "Sweetheart, happy anniversary of our first meeting. I've also prepared a candlelit dinner." Shen Xinyan trembled all over and shook her head. "I won't eat. I don't feel well." Now, every second spent with Zhu Yushen was pure torment for her. She had said it from the beginning, she had emotional purity. Unable to accept flaws, either don't provoke her at all, or since you've provoked her, why betray her? When Zhu Yushen heard her say she wasn't feeling well, he instantly went on high alert. First, he called several private doctors to examine her. Even after the checkup showed no issues, he still wasn't reassured. He sent his assistant to buy a pile of supplements to nourish her qi and blood, then personally made her a glass of warm milk and coaxed her to sleep. After 4 or 5 hours of effort, Shen Xinyan was finally coaxed to sleep by him. Late at night, Shen Xinyan suddenly woke up thirsty and was about to go out to get some water, but the moment she opened the door, her entire body froze in place. The door to the next room was wide open, and the bright moonlight streaming through the window illuminated 2 naked figures entangled on the bed. "That necklace today was worth hundreds of millions, and no matter how much I begged, you wouldn't give it to me." Sister Xinyan didn't even have to lift a finger, yet you eagerly presented all the good things to her. After the passion, Chu Yaro still had her legs wrapped around his waist, her words dripping with jealousy. Zhu Yushen frowned, pulled away, and sat on the edge of the bed to light a cigarette. "Have you forgotten your place? I've told you I only love Xinyan. If you want to maintain this kind of relationship with me, it has to be in secret. If she finds out, you know what will happen." Chu Yaro's face paled. She got up, her naked body clinging to him from behind as she pleaded pitifully. "I know you love Xinyan, but I love you too. Can't I even be a little jealous?" Zhu Yushen didn't respond. Instead, he bent down and pulled out a necklace from the drawer, identical in style to Shen Xinyan's, but in a different color. "Don't act so pitiful. I bought you one too, but you can only wear it in secret. If she finds out, our relationship ends immediately." Chu Yaro's face lit up with joy as she quickly took the necklace and held it against her neck, which was covered in purple love bites. "Thank you, Yushen. I knew you still cared about me. But are you really that afraid of Xinyan leaving you?" Without the slightest hesitation, he replied, "Yes, I can't live without her. If she leaves, I'll go mad." As soon as the words left his mouth, he pinned her down once more, beginning another round of passion. The bed creaked loudly from his movements, and the continuous moans of Chu Yaro reached her ears. Standing in the distance, Shen Xinyan's tears fell like rain. With reddened eyes, she stared at Zhu Yushen's face in the wedding photo on the wall. "Zhu Yushen, in 15 days. I'll be waiting for you to lose your mind." Chapter 2. At dawn, Shen Xinyan was startled awake by a clamor. She pushed open the door and only then saw, in the garden of the neighboring villa, a woman with an exhausted face gripping the clothes of the man before her, crying out in anguish, "Jiang, I've loved you for a full 10 years and even bore you several children. You promised to love me forever when we got married, and now, just a few years later, you dare to secretly keep a mistress behind my back." Although it was early morning, many people had already risen and were strolling around the lake, just in time to hear such shocking news. As the crowd in the villa area grew larger, the man, a figure of some standing, immediately changed his expression, grabbing the woman and pulling her into the villa. "What are you making a scene for? I've told you many times, there isn't a man in this world who doesn't stray." Shen Xinyan was lost in thought when a warm hand suddenly covered her ears gently from behind. Yang, don't listen to such foul language." Shen Xinyan didn't turn around, only whispering, "Tell me, do all men change their hearts?" Zhu Yushen stiffened slightly, turning the person before him to face himself. His eyes filled with sincerity. I can't speak for others, but I won't, Yang Yang. You're the only one I'll love in this lifetime. You'll only love me in this lifetime. But a lifetime is so long. Zhu Yushen gently embraced her, his warm breath brushing against her ear. A lifetime is so long, and I only want you. Shen Xinyan finally laughed, but the laughter carried a hint of bitterness. What if you betray me, if I ever betray you? May I be struck by lightning and die a miserable death. Knowing the full truth, hearing these words pierced her heart with unbearable pain. Zhu Yushen, how dare you make such a venomous oath? Aren't you afraid it might actually come true? Zhu Yushen chuckled softly. It won't, because no one knows better than I do how much I love you. If you don't believe me, I'll cut out my heart to show you. If you still don't believe me, I'll give you my entire life. Could he really give her his entire life? Then why couldn't he even control his lower half? His body still carried the lingering scent of intimacy with another woman, yet his lips whispered the sweetest words of love to her. Xinyan Jie, Yushenji, what are you doing? A voice suddenly rang out from the doorway, shattering the quiet moment. Turning their heads, they saw Chu Yao leaning against the doorframe, dressed in a strapless red dress. The next moment, Shen Xinyan clearly sensed Zhu Yushen's body stiffen slightly. In the next second, he frowned and asked, "Isn't today the weekend? Where are you going, dressed like that?" His tone didn't sound like a brother's concern for his sister, but more like a husband questioning his wife about to go out, and even jealous of how charmingly she was dressed. Hearing the jealousy in his voice, Chu Yao blushed and smiled coyly. "Our company is hosting a social mixer. I'm going to scout for a boyfriend, and I won't be coming back tonight." At these words, Zhu Yushen's expression darkened abruptly, while Chu Yaoro's smile grew even brighter. "By the way, Sister Xinyan, do you two have any plans for today?" Zhu Yushen finally snapped out of his thoughts and took Shen Xinyan's hand. "Your sister-in-law and I are going back to the old house today." Chu Yao smiled, leaving behind a request to send her regards before turning to leave. Half an hour later, Zhu Yushen drove Shen Xinyan to the old house. Zhu's parents were not particularly fond of their daughter-in-law, Shen Xinyan. The elderly couple felt that their once sensible son had been led astray by her, becoming so love-struck that he nearly lost his life. Moreover, the couple had remained childless for years after marriage, which only added to the parents' displeasure. Every meeting was met with cold stares and disapproval. Zhu Yushen felt sorry for him and always tried to minimize their interactions, but this time, news came from the old house that Zhu's mother had been in poor health recently. He had no choice but to take Shen Xinyan back for a visit. As soon as the two entered the door, Zhu's parents, who had been chatting and laughing, suddenly turned cold. Zhu Yushen could see they were giving Shen Xinyan a hard time and instantly lost his temper. "If you keep this up, Yang Yang and I won't come back in the future." At these words, Zhu's father angrily slammed the table. "Outrageous! How dare you say such a thing? Are you abandoning your parents for a woman?" Zhu Yushen firmly held Shen Xinyan's hand, showing no sign of backing down. "I've said that Yang Yang is the love of my life. I'm even afraid of disturbing her by speaking too loudly to her. How could you treat her like this? Are you trying to break your own son's heart? If this happens again, I'll consider myself as having no family from now on." Chapter 3. No one had expected Zhu Yushen to be so resolute, and the atmosphere in the living room instantly turned deathly silent. Yet, as Shen Xinyan looked at the man who was now wholeheartedly defending her, she felt not the slightest bit of gratitude in her heart. Seeing that her son was serious, Mother Zhu conceded. "All right, let's eat first." At the dining table, apart from the clinking of bowls and chopsticks, there was only the occasional cold snort from Mother Zhu. Shen Xinyan's hand holding the chopsticks stiffened. She knew this was a sign that Mother Zhu was about to lecture her. Sure enough, in the next moment, Mrs. Zhu put down her chopsticks. "We won't interfere with anything else. But shouldn't you at least give us a grandchild? You can't just cut off our family line." Zhu Yushen immediately set down his chopsticks as well. "I've told you before, Yang is afraid of pain. I won't let her endure the agony of childbirth for me. I'd rather have no descendants in this lifetime." Upon hearing this, Mr. and Mrs. Zhu couldn't bring themselves to eat another bite. Just as the argument was about to escalate again, Shen Xinyan suddenly spoke up. In half a month, Dad, Mom, in half a month you'll have a grandchild. Her words left everyone staring at her in shock. Yang, Zhu Yushan grabbed her hand. Didn't we agree not to have children? You don't have to sacrifice for me. Shen Xinyan looked at his righteous and solemn expression and gave a slight tug at the corner of her lips. She had said they would have a grandson. But she never said it would be her who gave birth to him. In half a month, she would be abroad. Since he liked Chu Yao so much and insisted on sleeping with her multiple times every day, it was only natural for her to be the one to bear the child. So she smiled and said, "It's the elder's wish, it should be fulfilled." Zhu Yushan looked at her well-behaved demeanor and suddenly felt a twinge of unease in his heart. Her behavior was strangely too mature. Only then did Mr. and Mrs. Zhu's expressions shift from anger to smiles. "That's more like it," they said. Zhu Yushan still felt something was off and was about to press further when his phone suddenly vibrated. He glanced at it, and his expression subtly changed. Shen Xinyan was sitting close enough to catch a glimpse. It was a message from Chu Yao. "Yushanji, there's a guy who likes me and asked for my contact info. Should I give it to him or not?" She silently counted down in her heart. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Finally, at the 3rd second, Zhu Yushan stood up. "Sorry, Yang, I have something urgent to handle at the company. Take your time eating here, and I'll come pick you up once I'm done." Without waiting for Shen Xinyan's response, he hurriedly left, not even taking his coat. As soon as Zhu Yushan was gone, his parents immediately lost all restraint and began to criticize her with disdain, their expressions full of contempt. "Look at you, how many years have you been married? Yet your belly remains empty. Aren't you ashamed? Your family is insignificant, and both your parents are dead. If it weren't for Yushan's affection, do you think you could ever become Mrs. Zhu? Marrying you was the worst luck in 8 lifetimes. What's with those red eyes? Don't even think about complaining to Yushan later. Which daughter-in-law doesn't get scolded? My son is so busy. Don't you dare bother him with such trivial matters, from morning till afternoon." Shen Xinyan endured a full 5 hours of scolding. It wasn't until evening that Zhu Yushan finally returned to pick her up. As the car moved steadily along the road home, Shen Xinyan suddenly spoke up. "Have you finished all your work at the company?" Zhu Yushan was taken aback for a moment, then replied gently, "Everything's been taken care of." As he spoke, his index finger resting on the steering wheel tapped it lightly. It was an unconscious gesture he made when in a good mood. Perhaps noticing her prolonged silence, Zhu Yushan belatedly asked, "After I left, did Mom and Dad give you any trouble?" Shen Xinyan was about to speak when she suddenly noticed a pair of torn polka-dot stockings under the passenger seat. She knew he had left to find Chu Yao, but she never expected they would. In the car, they had been married for 5 years, and she had always been quite conservative when it came to intimacy, afraid he might find her dull. She had even blushed and asked him if he wanted her to change. He smiled and held her in his arms, kissing her again and again. "Sweetheart, you're the only one who moves me. Even if you were dressed in rags, my heart would still race for you. You don't have to force yourself to do things you dislike for my sake. The one who loves you will always be moved by you." Yet the man who was once so pure-hearted towards her was secretly playing around with another woman behind her back. Shen Xinyan's eyes reddened. "What do you think?" Zhu Yushan had no idea that his affair with Chu Yao had long been exposed in front of her. He mistakenly thought she was crying because she had been wronged by his parents. I quickly stepped on the brake and held her gently, soothing her. "I'm sorry, Yang. It's my fault. I shouldn't have left you behind. I promise I'll never let you suffer like this again." Shen Xinyan was held tightly by him, but all she felt was suffocation. She pushed him away, fighting back her tears. "Keep driving," she said. After all, they had no future together. Chapter 4. After arriving home, Zhu Yushan went to park the car first. As Shen Xinyan entered, she saw Chu Yao already changed into a nightgown, sitting on the sofa with snacks, watching TV. She paused and deliberately remarked, "Didn't you say you had a mixer today and wouldn't be coming home?" Chu Yao curled her lips and feigned shyness. "Oh, Xinyanjie, I forgot to tell you. I actually had a fight with my boyfriend, so I went to the mixer on purpose to annoy him." When I told him about it, he acted all indifferent, but the moment I arrived at the ball, he showed up right after and dragged me away." As she spoke, she deliberately pulled down her collar to reveal the dense marks of kisses underneath. Casting a provocative glance at Shen Xinyan, I truly didn't expect his jealousy to be so intense. He took me 3 times in the car right then and there. Listening to her words, Shen Xinyan dug her nails deep into her palms, the pain spreading throughout her entire body. She took a deep breath. "When did you get a boyfriend? Why haven't I heard you mention him before?" Chu Yao looked up with a smile and said casually, "Just 3 months ago." The time Chu Yao moved into the Zhu family's home was exactly 3 months ago. Back then, she had just started working in this city, and Zhu Yushen's brother, worried about her, asked him to take extra care of his sister, so she had been fooling around with him from the very first day she moved in. Shen Xinyan's breathing gradually became rapid, and just as she was about to speak, a pair of large hands suddenly grasped her shoulders from behind. Zhu Yushen walked in and said gently, Yang, you've been tired all day. I'll draw you a bath. After washing up, you should rest early, okay?" Shen Xinyan was thus ushered into the bathroom. Just as she was about to take off her clothes to wash away the fatigue, she realized she had forgotten to bring a change of clothes. As soon as the door opened, a blinding scene forced its way into her vision. Not far away, Zhu Yushen was roughly and urgently tugging at Chu Yaoyao's nightgown while pinning her tightly against the sofa. His large hands gripped her waist as his kisses trailed down from her collarbone. Chu Yaoyao clung to his shoulders, tilting her head back with continuous soft moans. Be gentler. Xinyanjie is still showering. Didn't you have enough in the car earlier?" Zhu Yushen held on even tighter, the girl's panting beginning to carry a sob. "Shut up. Just try seeing another man in the future." Chu Yaoyao curled a faint smile at the corner of her lips, then, as if noticing something, seductively lifted her eyes, provocatively glancing at Shen Xinyan, who stood frozen at the doorway. "All right, I won't go. Isn't it enough that I'm completely yours, big, jealous king?" Shen Xinyan couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her change of clothes and slammed the bathroom door shut again. She submerged herself entirely in the water, her mind completely occupied by the scene from moments ago. 5 years ago, they went on a honeymoon trip to an island. Just because she glanced at a man with abs by the beach, his face darkened, he pulled her back to the presidential suite, and for 7 whole days, didn't let her take a single step outside. After 7 days, the strawberry-flavored lube ran out, and the bed collapsed. He held her protectively in his arms, his eyes reddening with vulnerability. Yang, I have everything they have. Don't look at others, don't leave me." She reassured him repeatedly for a long time before his jealousy finally subsided. From that day on, she never dared to glance at another man again. Now, for Chu Yaoyao, he was just as crazed. Shen Xinyan emerged from the water, taking a deep breath. When she stepped out of the bathroom, only Zhu Yushen remained in the room. On the table before him, aside from sliced fruit, there was also a steaming cup of brown sugar water. Seeing her come out, he quickly handed her the brown sugar water with a fawning gesture. "I counted the days. Your period is due soon. I prepared this brown sugar water in advance. Have a sip, and it won't hurt as much later." Shen Xinyan held the steaming cup of brown sugar water in her hands, yet not a trace of warmth reached her heart. She couldn't understand how his acting could be so flawless. Just moments after leaving another woman's bed, he could effortlessly transform into the image of a loving, devoted husband. This question gnawed at her heart, leaving her sleepless throughout the night. Just as she was drifting off to sleep, Zhu Yushen, who had been sleeping soundly beside her, suddenly called out, Yang. The next moment, he was abruptly startled awake, frantically groping around in confusion. Only when he touched her body did he hurriedly pull her into his embrace. Yang, don't go." Shen Xinyan's body stiffened slightly. "What's wrong with you?" Zhu Yushen's eyes turned red with lingering fear. "I had a nightmare where you left me. Thankfully, it was just a dream, and you're still here." Shen Xinyan lowered her eyes, wanting very much to tell him, "She will be gone soon." Perhaps because of this dream, Zhu Yushen insisted on taking Shen Xinyan to work with him the next day. Shen Xinyan refused, but he begged her relentlessly, Not wanting to waste any more time on this, Shen Xinyan had no choice but to go out with him. As soon as she entered Zhu Yushen's office, she saw his desk covered with photos of herself. Noticing her staring at the photos in a daze, he hugged her from behind, nuzzling her neck affectionately. "There are always many women trying to cling to me. After putting up these photos, the effect has been much better. Don't worry, my dear, your husband keeps himself very clean." Shen Xinyan lowered her gaze to look at him but remained silent. Just then, his assistant knocked on the door to remind him that the meeting was about to start. Zhu Yushen reluctantly held her for a while longer before turning away to attend to his work, letting Shen Xinyan explore the surroundings on her own. Shen Xinyan wasn't particularly interested in exploring, but she didn't want to stay in his office either, so she walked around each floor, and just before noon, she suddenly received a phone call from the immigration office. "Miss Shen, we'll need you to personally come in to sign one more document for the immigration process." Shen Xinyan was just about to speak when a familiar voice suddenly came from behind. "What immigration?" Chapter 5. Shen Xinyan turned around abruptly, just in time to see Zhu Yushen standing behind her with a drastically changed expression. The moment she hung up the phone, he rushed over and grabbed her hand. "Yang Yang, who's immigrating?" Shen Xinyan's expression remained unchanged. "It's a classmate of mine. She's planning to emigrate and wanted to meet up before leaving." Perhaps because her expression was too calm, Zhu Yushen never considered the possibility that she might be lying, but he still hugged her tightly, fearfully saying, "I thought it was you. You scared me to death." Shen Xinyan curled her lips slightly. "It's just emigration. Why such a big reaction?" Zhu Yushen's heart was pounding wildly. He explained helplessly, "Yang Yang, you know my family background. 3 generations in the military. We can't go abroad." He paused, then seemed uneasy and repeatedly reminded her, "If I do anything wrong, you can hit me, scold me, even kill me. Just don't emigrate abroad, because then I'd never find you again, and that would be worse than death." Shen Xinyan, held tightly in his embrace, simply smiled faintly and said, "I understand." Perhaps sensing something unusual, Zhu Yushen kept Shen Xinyan by his side for the next few days, never leaving her for a moment. Even when a friend opened a new club and invited their circle for a gathering, he wanted to take her along as well. With him keeping such a close watch every day, Shen Xinyan, who happened to be unsure how to slip away to sign the immigration papers, simply followed him. As soon as they entered the private room, a group of brothers immediately gathered around. "Sister-in-law, you can relax and enjoy yourself today. We know you prefer quiet. So we've changed the music to piano pieces and cleared the entire venue." "That's right, sister-in-law. We also have some desserts prepared for you here. Brother Shen took care of it, all your favorites. Come, sister-in-law, sit over here. The fruits are all washed and cut." Zhu Yushen watched them and couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. "Since when did you all become so good at pleasing people? Who in the world doesn't know that sister-in-law is Brother Shen's beloved? If we don't please sister-in-law, how can Brother Shen still hang out with us?" "Exactly. Everyone knows Brother Shen forgets his brothers once he has a wife. We brothers suffer in silence, so we have no choice but to join Brother Shen in spoiling sister-in-law rotten." The room erupted in laughter instantly. Just as the atmosphere was at its peak, a petite figure suddenly walked in. It was none other than Chu Yao Yao. The manager quickly stepped forward to stop her. "I'm sorry, miss, but the club is hosting distinguished guests today and isn't accepting other patrons." Chu Yao Yao pushed past him and walked in without hesitation. "Sister Xinyan, Brother Yushen, so it's you who booked the place. What a coincidence. You don't mind if I join, do you?" Without waiting for a response, she immediately sat down next to Shen Xinyan. Then, under the dim lighting, she pulled Zhu Yushen's hand beneath her skirt. Shen Xinyan trembled slightly and couldn't help glancing at Zhu Yushen. The moment Chu Yao Yao appeared, his expression had darkened, as if he wanted to send her away, but the instant his hand was pulled under her skirt, he closed his eyes, his slender fingers moving faintly. At that moment, Shen Xinyan felt as if she could barely breathe. She struggled to control her emotions, pretending as if she had noticed nothing. Midway through the gathering, Shen Xinyan got up and went to the restroom. She splashed cold water on her face over and over, trying to sober herself up, until a provocative voice suddenly appeared beside her. "Sister Xinyan, don't take this the wrong way, but you're still so young, you should dress up more and not always be so conservative." Shen Xinyan looked up and saw the faint hint of disdain in Chu Yaroro's eyes reflected in the mirror. "Look at me." She flung open her coat, revealing the seductive fox lingerie underneath. They say men are visual creatures, ruled by their lower instincts. "Want to make a bet? If I tell him I'm wearing this, will Yushan keep accompanying you, or will he secretly rush to have me right here?" Shen Xinyan's body trembled slightly. Without a word, she shook the water off her hands and returned to the private room. Not long after, Chu Yaoyao also walked in. Only as she passed by Zhu Yushan, she subtly tapped his phone. Zhu Yushan glanced at his phone, and though the message was brief, it made his Adam's apple bob slightly as his eyes darkened abruptly. Then, as if nothing had happened, he tossed his phone into his pocket and stood up suddenly. "Yang, I need to step out to make a call. Stay here for now, I'll be back soon." Without waiting for her response, he hurriedly got up and left. Not long after, Chu Yaoyao also excused herself and left. Watching the two figures disappear into the distance, Shen Xinyan desperately suppressed her breathing. Yet the pain in her heart felt like a sharp blade, slicing mercilessly into her soul. Over and over again, the agony was unbearable, and all she could think of was dragging Zhu Yushan down into hell with her, making him suffer even more, hurting him even deeper. As the night grew darker, Zhu Yushan, who had promised to return immediately that afternoon, still hadn't appeared. The group of brothers exchanged awkward glances, unsure of what to say. Finally, one of the brothers stood up and suggested sending Shen Xinyan home first, explaining that Zhu Yushan might have been held up by something. Yet Shen Xinyan only felt it was ironic. Apart from Chu Yaoyao, what could possibly hold him back? But she said nothing, silently leaving the private room. A group of brothers eagerly escorted her to the car, but only after getting in did she realize she had forgotten her bag. Just as she was about to return to the room to retrieve it, she suddenly heard a long sigh from inside. "Finally got the sister-in-law out. If it had gone on any longer, I would have definitely been exposed. I don't know how Brother Shen manages to act so perfectly in front of her." Chapter 6. Shen Xinyan's feet seemed instantly nailed to the spot. Yet the conversation inside hadn't ended. "Bro Shen and Yao Yao, aren't they done yet? It's been so long, almost 5 hours now. Why the rush? Bro Shen is so strong, and Yao Yao is so alluring. They won't come down until they've gone at it for a whole day, but they're being way too blatant about it, going at it like a house on fire right in the next booth." I even heard moans halfway through. Luckily, I had the quick wit to ask someone to turn up the music, so sis-in-law didn't notice. "You have no idea how nervous I was just now." "What's there to be nervous about? After you've done it a few more times like me, you'll get used to it." Brother Shen finally has a woman he fancies besides sis-in-law, and isn't just revolving around her anymore. Of course, we gotta help him out and let him indulge in some wildflowers to his heart's content. Ha ha ha, sis-in-law is pretty, sure, but she's too conservative, probably like a dead fish in bed. What man doesn't love a thrilling seductress? After all, the rest of the words became indistinct to Shen Xinyan. A buzzing filled her ears as she stumbled dazedly forward. So everyone had known, they'd all kept it from her alone, these so-called brothers, polite to her face, yet secretly covering for Zhu Yushan while openly mocking and humiliating her. Her heart felt torn apart by invisible hands, every fiber of her being racked with unbearable agony. The heavy rain poured outside, yet she seemed completely unaware, walking forward step by step like a soulless zombie. She walked alone to the immigration office, signed the papers in a disheveled state. Then she walked back home alone and shut herself tightly inside the room. From that day onward, Shen Xinyan developed a high fever. Zhu Yushan didn't discover it until the next day when he returned. By then, Shen Xinyan was already burning with fever, delirious to the point of not recognizing anyone. He was so frightened it nearly took half his life away, frantically carrying her to the hospital like a madman. Fortunately, it was just a minor flu, after a day and night on and 4 drip. She regained consciousness, but Zhu Yushan was left with lingering fear. Not only did he reserve the entire hospital floor, but he also stopped going to the company altogether, staying by her side without leaving for a single moment, until that day, when the assistant pushed the door open, saying an extremely important client had come to visit and insisted on seeing him. Ju Yushin frowned and was about to refuse when the assistant quickly whispered something in his ear. His expression changed slightly, and in the end, he let go of Shen Xinyan's hand. Yang, before he could finish, Shen Xinyan closed her eyes and calmly interrupted him. Go ahead. Ju Yushin looked at Shen Xinyan's calm demeanor, and for some reason, his heart suddenly ached. It wasn't that he hadn't noticed something was off, but he was in a hurry to leave at the moment, so he comforted himself by thinking that Yang was just in a bad mood because she had just fallen ill, and that he was overthinking it. He instructed the nurse to take good care of Shen Xinyan and told her he would come back to accompany her once he was done with his work, then turned and left. 3 days later, Shen Xinyan didn't wait for Ju Yushin to return. Instead, she received a phone call from Chu Yaoyao. Chu Yaoyoro's smug voice came from the other end of the phone. Xinyanjie, I have some good news to tell you. I'm pregnant and going to be a mom, and the father of the baby, well, it's your husband. He's been with me these past few days, taking such good care of me. He carries me when I get out of bed and even hand feeds me. Oh, and the doctor said we can have sex after 3 months of pregnancy. He was so thrilled. That very night, he pinned me to the bed and took me again and again. Plus, since we don't need condoms now that I'm pregnant, he went even wilder. He tried dozens of positions with me all night, flipping me over and over. Though it left me exhausted, it felt so good. I loved it. Oops, I might have said too much. Xinyanjie, you're not mad, are you? And don't blame Yushinji. After all, compared to a fever, his child is way more important, right? Chu Yaoyoro's words were dripping with venom. Under normal circumstances, she thought, they would have devastated her. Perhaps she had long been numb to the pain, but now, hearing these words, she couldn't shed a single tear. She said nothing, asked nothing, only silently pressed the record button. Ju Yushin, I'm very curious about how you'll feel when you hear this recording. Chapter 7. The day Shen Xinyan was discharged from the hospital happened to be her birthday, a grand celebration day. Ju Yushin splurged extravagantly, booking the most luxurious hotel in the city to celebrate Shen Xinyan's birthday. The opulence of the banquet left the arriving guests in awe and envy. Ju Yushin's group of brothers also meticulously prepared birthday gifts for her, yet she showed little interest, as after the previous incident, she had lost all goodwill towards Ju Yushin and his brothers. But those people didn't think much of it, simply assuming she was still recovering and lacked energy. Soon it was time to cut the cake and make a wish. Ju Yushin wrapped his arms around her, holding her hand as they cut the cake together while asking, Yang, it's your birthday today. Do you have any wishes? If it were before, she would have shaken her head and said no, because back then she felt that as long as he loved her, it was enough. But now, she has a very strong desire to leave him and never see him again. She raised her eyes to look at the man gazing at her with deep affection. Will you fulfill any wish I make? Ju Yushin was taken aback for a moment, then smiled even more tenderly. Of course, Shen Xinyan smiled, but the warmth didn't reach her eyes. In that case, I do have 3 wishes. Ju Yushin smiled dotingly. All right, tell me, whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Shen Xinyan turned around and took out a blank sheet of paper from her bag. My first wish is for you to sign this blank sheet of paper. At these words, everyone gasped in shock. Everyone in the circle knows that, given their status, the last thing they'd do is sign on a blank sheet of paper, if exploited by those with ill intentions. The consequences would be unimaginable. How could someone as cautious as Ju Yushin possibly sign on it, unless he's gone completely mad? To everyone's surprise, Ju Yushin merely gave a doting smile, then promptly signed his name on the blank paper Shen Xinyan handed him without the slightest hesitation. Good girl, it's done. Shen Xinyan clutched the paper tightly, feeling a wave of relief wash over her, with this handwritten signature from Ju Yushin. She could now draft the divorce agreement. From now on, she would have nothing to do with Ju Yushin. Ju Yushin noticed the slight curve at the corners of her eyes, and his mood lifted as well. Sweetheart, what's your second wish? Shen Xinyan raised her eyes to look at the guests before her. They looked at her, some with faces full of shock, others brimming with envy. The only one out of place was Chu Yaoyao, standing not far away, her gaze fixed intently on her, her face twisted with jealousy. Yet her eyes drifted past them, gazing into the distance as if trying to catch a glimpse of the foreign land where her future life would unfold. The next moment, she curled her lips slightly. "My second wish is for you to transfer all the shares of Ju Corporation to me." The moment these words were spoken, they sent shockwaves through the crowd, stirring an uproar. Ju Yushen's shares are worth hundreds of billions, no matter how much he dotes on his wife. He couldn't possibly transfer all of them to her. Yet Ju Yushen immediately called his lawyer, instructing them to transfer every single share under his name, without exception, to his wife Shen Xinyan. Shen Xinyan, looking at the electronically signed and stamped share transfer document on her phone, was in an excellent mood. Just sell these shares, and her life abroad will be carefree. Even spending 10 lifetimes wouldn't exhaust the wealth. Ju Yushen held her lovingly in his arms. "Sweetheart. Now I have nothing left, I've become your employee. You can't abandon me." Shen Xinyan pursed her lips and was about to speak when a sudden exclamation rose from the crowd. "Something's wrong. Someone has fainted." Ju Yushen looked up and happened to see that the person who had fainted was Chu Yaoyao. His expression changed abruptly, and he was about to step forward quickly. Fortunately, reason made him remember something again. He turned back to look at Shen Xinyan. "Yang. I'll take her to the hospital first. You have fun here. As for the last wish, just text me." "Gone." Ju Yushen didn't hear clearly. "What?" Shen Xinyan shook her head. "It's nothing. You can go." Watching his hurried departure with Chu Yaoyao in his arms, Shen Xinyan smiled faintly. "Ju Yushen, my third wish doesn't need you to fulfill it for me, because that wish is to leave you completely. Just 3 more days, and I can do it." Chapter 8. In the evening. As soon as Shen Xinyan returned home, she received a phone call from Ju Yushen at the hospital. "Yang, I'm sorry, but Chu Yaoyao, she's not feeling well and needs to stay in the hospital for a few more days. Her brother asked me to take care of her, and I can't go back on my word. I'll have to stay at the hospital to look after her these few days, so I won't be able to come back to be with you." Shen Xinyan's tone was very calm. "It's all right. You should spend time with her properly. Ju Yushen, from now on, you can always be there for her. There are only 3 days left before departure." Chu Yaoyao suddenly sent Shen Xinyan a video. In the video, the same birthday party venue, Chu Yaoyao, dressed in a princess gown and wearing a crown, stood right in the center surrounded by piles of gifts. Ju Yushen wrapped his arms around her from behind, affectionately kissing her earlobe. "Happy birthday, little princess. What's your wish?" Chu Yaoyao lifted her chin arrogantly. "I want to be like Shen Xinyan. No matter what wish I make, you have to fulfill it." Ju Yushen pinched the tip of her nose dotingly. "All right, we'll fulfill all our little princess's wishes." Shen Xinyan did not reply, silently saved the video, and then left the house. She took the blank paper signed by Ju Yushen and went to the law firm. "Miss Shen, the divorce agreement has been drafted. As long as you sign your name next to it, your marital relationship will be completely dissolved." Shen Xinyan nodded and signed her name without hesitation. From now on, she and Ju Yushen would be complete strangers. There were only 2 days left before departure. Chu Yaoyao sent another video to Shen Xinyan. In the video, Ju Yushen was carefully pressing his ear against Chu Yaoyao's belly. Chu Yaoyao curled her lips. "The baby is only 3 months old. What could you possibly hear?" Ju Yushen, however, said with all seriousness, "I heard him calling me daddy." Chu Yaoyao laughed even more heartily, slipping her nightgown halfway down. "The baby can't call you that yet, but if you want to hear it, I can let you hear it to your heart's content. Daddy." In that instant, Ju Yushen's Adam's apple bobbed, and he turned to pin her beneath him on the bed. Then, the bed began to shake violently, again and again. "Yushen, not this position. No, don't lift me up like that." Ju Yushen's voice was deep and hoarse. "Didn't you call me daddy? This is how a father holds his good daughter." Shen Xinyan still didn't respond. She made a call to her lawyer and sold all the shares Ju Yushen had gifted her. "Then I went to the bank again and withdrew part of the money. exchanging it into foreign currency. On the day of departure, Shen Xinyan got up very early. She was busy with 3 tasks. First, she gathered all the gifts Zhu Yushan had given her over the years and gave them away for free to the servants in the villa. The servants were both delighted and puzzled. After all, these gifts were priceless treasures. Shen Xinyan, however, smiled cheerfully. I've had something very happy happen to me recently, so I wanted to share my joy with everyone. Don't feel burdened, just accept them. Also, there's no need to clean the villa today, no meals to prepare, and no flowers to water. You can leave early. Encountering such good fortune, the servants were overjoyed. After thanking Shen Xinyan repeatedly, they left the villa with armfuls of gifts. Second, she compiled all the provocative messages, videos, and recordings that Chu Yao had sent her during this time. For the text messages, she had them printed in 1 million copies and scattered across the entire city using drones. For the videos, she had them projected onto the giant advertising screens in the city center, playing on a loop throughout the city. For the recordings, she arranged for 10,000 loudspeakers to play them on repeat in the square. Third, she packed all her luggage and placed the divorce certificate on the table. At that moment, her phone suddenly rang. It was Zhu Yushan calling. His tone remained gentle. Yang, I'll be done with work soon. Once I'm finished, I'll come back to be with you. Shen Xinyan responded with a soft millimeter, adding, I just so happen to have prepared a surprise for you. Zhu Yushan sounded quite expectant. Really, what surprise has my darling prepared for your husband? Shen Xinyan replied calmly, you'll see it as soon as you return, perhaps. If the timing is just right on the way, you might also see those text messages, videos, and recordings. Zhu Yushan hung up the phone full of anticipation. But Shen Xinyan simply walked out with her already packed suitcase. On the tree-lined path, she encountered a few neighbors. They greeted her warmly. Xinyan, going on a trip? Shen Xinyan nodded and responded enthusiastically. Yes, going on a trip, just that they'll never come back again. The sunlight was just right today. Shen Xinyan carried her luggage and boarded the car to the airport without looking back. Chapter 9. In the hospital, Zhu Yushan looked at Chu Yao lying on the hospital bed. His tone carrying a hint of reproach. You're pregnant. Why are you running around like this? What if something happens to the baby? The woman on the hospital bed acted as if she hadn't heard, clinging to his waist and coquettishly saying, All right, I get it. I didn't see you just now. I thought you didn't want me anymore. By the end of her words, her eyes were slightly reddened, but Zhu Yushan wasn't buying it at all. He pushed her away abruptly, pinched her chin, and his tone carried a hint of warning. I told you long ago, as long as you don't say anything unnecessary in front of her, our relationship can continue, not to mention you're carrying my child now. Stop thinking about such unnecessary things. Focus on taking care of the pregnancy. I need to go back for a while. With that, Zhu Yushan released his grip and walked towards the door. A flicker of unwillingness flashed in Chu Yao's eyes as she quickly grabbed his arm, her voice pleading. Do you really have to leave now? This is the time when the child needs their father the most. As she spoke, her fair fingers slid down from his chest, a hint of seduction flickering in the corners of her eyes. Zhu Yushan's Adam's apple bobbed, and the next moment, he cupped the back of her head and leaned in for a kiss. Soon, the woman's moans and the man's muffled groans intertwined. Faint sounds seeped through the door crack, making the nurse who came to check the room blush and quietly leave. Late at night, Zhu Yushan changed into a fresh set of clothes and left the hospital. As Linjiang Garden came into view, Zhu Yushan's sense of guilt grew heavier. He had called Shen Xinyan in the afternoon, promising to return that evening to be with her, yet it was only now that he finally made it back. I wonder how sad she must be feeling right now. Moreover, she mentioned preparing a surprise for herself on the table. He irritably ran his hand over the steering wheel when his gaze suddenly caught the apology gift on the passenger seat beside him. It was a new watch he had specifically called his assistant to pick out for Shen Xinyan on his way home. It was also something Shen Xinyan had mentioned wanting to buy a long time ago. Though unintentionally, it could also serve as compensation for her birthday and make up for his recent neglect of her. Zhu Yushan stared at the gift for a long time, only snapping out of his thoughts when the gate of Linjiang Garden opened. He then hurriedly drove toward the villa. Without even bothering to close the car door, he rushed toward the house with long strides, the gift in hand. Yang yang, slap. The moment Ju Yushen turned on the living room light, his entire body froze in place. The entire villa was empty and silent, with no one else there except him. Not only could he clearly hear the ticking of the wall clock's hour hand, but also the sudden rapid beating of his own heart. Ju Yushen stood frozen in the entryway for a long moment before finally lifting his stiff legs to walk toward the living room. At a glance, he spotted the vivid red on the table. Remembering Shen Xinyan's words, Ju Yushen hurried toward the table. When he finally read the words on the red booklet, the gift in his hands suddenly fell to the floor. The thin, fragile box instantly shattered into pieces, the fragments scratching the watch face inside. Ju Yushen's vision suddenly darkened in waves as he struggled to suppress his trembling hands and picked up the divorce certificate on the table. The moment he touched the embossed seal on the divorce certificate, all his strength drained away. The man who commanded respect in the business world now lacked even a shred of courage to open this divorce certificate. "Sir," it wasn't until the butler's voice sounded that Ju Yushen snapped out of his thoughts and put the divorce certificate into his pocket. He looked up at the butler and saw him standing there with several servants, holding some items in their hands. "Sir, Madam gave us many gifts when she left today. She said she wanted to share her joy with us. We thought the gift from Madam was too valuable, so we intended to return it to her, but Madam insisted we keep it, and we felt uneasy holding on to it, so we thought it best to let you handle it." Ju Yushen could hear nothing anymore. His vision was filled only with the gifts in the hands of the butler and the servants. Those were all gifts he had either meticulously crafted or carefully selected to give to Shen Xinyan. She had once treasured them so much. So why did she suddenly not want them anymore? And she even gave them all away to others. He touched the divorce certificate in his pocket, feeling it suddenly grow scorching hot, so hot that his hand began to tremble uncontrollably, yet his voice remained utterly calm. A calmness even he found hard to believe. "Uncle you said Madam went out today. Do you know where she went?" He had to find her, to ask her for an explanation. Why did she suddenly divorce him when they were living so well together? Suddenly don't want him anymore. The people across from each other exchanged glances. "This, we don't know either. We only saw the lady leaving happily at the time, and didn't think to ask more." Chapter 10. Ju Yushen took a deep breath and motioned for them to place the gifts on the table beside him. The butler and servants quietly left after setting down the gifts. Ju Yushen gazed at the table piled high with presents, his eyes dark and unreadable. It was at this moment that Ju Yushen noticed a piece of paper buried beneath the mountain of gifts. He pulled out the paper and was about to discard it when the handwriting on it suddenly caught his eye. Shen Xinyan's handwriting was delicate and elegant, much like her personality. Always gentle and composed, no matter how great the difficulty she faced, she remained calm. Yet, the paper had several spots where the pen tip had pierced through. The document only recorded the locations, times, and frequency of his affairs with Chu Yao Yao. Beyond that, she left him not a single word, yet it seemed as though everything that needed to be said or done had already been made abundantly clear. After reading the final word, Ju Yushen's grip on the paper tightened until his knuckles turned white. At that very moment, the phone in my hand suddenly started vibrating wildly. As soon as I answered, my assistant's urgent voice came through from the other end of the line. "Something's happened, President. Someone has printed out all the details about you and Miss Chu and is using drones to scatter them across the entire capital. Although most of the drones have been intercepted by our team, quite a few people still saw them. Many shareholders have called to ask what's going on." Ju Yushen suddenly clenched the paper in his hand, crumpling it. "Get PR and legal on this immediately to suppress the matter. I don't want to see or hear about this matter anywhere again." With that, he abruptly hung up the phone, then cast a deep glance at the paper in his hand. Finally, he crumpled the paper into a ball, stuffed it into his pocket, and turned to walk toward the main door. The black car roared back to life, piercing through the rain like a dark arrow. The car finally came to a steady stop at the hospital entrance. Ju Yushen didn't even have time to close the car door before striding towards the hospital entrance. The night shift nurse quickly stood up to greet him when she saw him approaching, but upon seeing Ju Yushin's gloomy expression, all the words she wanted to say got stuck in her throat. Then the young nurse saw Ju Yushin walk straight into a hospital room and slam the door shut. The loud banging sound not only startled the nurse, making her shiver, but also woke up Chu Yaoyao, who had been sound asleep in the hospital bed. Blinking sleepily, she propped herself up, about to scold which careless nurse had disturbed her rest. But the moment she saw the man standing by her bed, the anger in her eyes instantly turned to delight. Yushin, how did you get here? She thought Ju Yushin would stay with her after taking her several times today. Yet in the end, he still chose to leave. The mere thought of him spending these next few days by Shen Xinyan's side made her heart inexplicably ache with bitterness. What does that woman Shen Xinyan have that's better than her? She doesn't even know how to dress up and can't bear children. The more she thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt. Barely managing to soothe herself to sleep, yet not long after, Ju Yushin actually came to accompany her again. Indeed, he still had her in his heart. At this thought, Chu Yaoyao couldn't help but feel smug and reached out for him to hold her. However, instead of the expected embrace, she suddenly felt a tight grip around her neck. Ju Yushin gripped her neck, his usually indifferent eyes now filled with fury. I've said I only love Xinyan. If you want to maintain this relationship with me, it can only be in secret. If she finds out, our relationship ends immediately. Chu Yaoyao, where did you get the audacity to provoke her in front of her? His tone grew colder, and the strength in his hand increased. Chu Yaoyoro's face was deathly pale as she struggled desperately, tears streaming down her face while she tried to explain. No, I didn't, Yushin, believe me, I never exposed our relationship to Xinyanjie. Ju Yushin flung her onto the bed and threw the paper from his pocket onto Chu Yaoyoro's face. You never told her, then how did she know all this? Chu Yaoyoro's hands trembled as she unfolded the crumpled paper. Her face instantly drained of all color. She could no longer care about anything else. Climbing down from the hospital bed, she knelt before him, weeping and begging for mercy. Every word she spoke was a plea in her own defense. She had only done it because she loved him too much. She never expected Sister Xinyan to leave directly after finding out. Ju Yushin looked down at her coldly from his superior position. You love me, but I don't love you. If you hadn't taken advantage of my drunkenness to climb into my bed, how could we have ended up like this? Chapter 11. Chu Yaoyao, who had been sobbing, suddenly stopped crying. She looked up at him in a daze. You don't love me. How dare you not love me? She suddenly went mad, screaming at him with heart-wrenching agony. She had devoted her entire youth to this man before her. She had even given him her most precious virtue as a woman. She had even conceived his child. He actually doesn't love her. Watching Chu Yaoyoro's almost insane demeanor, Ju Yushin suddenly recalled the woman in the neighboring villa who had screamed at her cheating husband that day. He bent down, pinched her chin, and squeezed it so hard it nearly dislocated. What makes you think you deserve my love? If it weren't for Yanyan's infertility, do you think you'd still be alive today? You would have been torn to pieces the very next day after you climbed into my bed. At that cocktail party, he was persuaded by a business partner to drink a few more glasses. And Shen Xinyan had always disliked the smell of alcohol. He just thought about resting in the guest room for the night, waiting for the alcohol smell to fade before going to the master bedroom. But when he woke up from his drunken state, he found a completely naked Chu Yaoyao lying beside him. At that moment, he felt both furious and terrified. What angered him was that he never expected his friend's sister to be so bold as to dare climb into his bed. What he feared was that Shen Xinyan would be sad and heartbroken if she found out, and might even leave him. At that moment, he had only one thought, to get rid of Chu Yaoyao. But Chu Yaoyao knelt on the ground, pleading with him desperately. Meanwhile, his parents called again, pressuring them to have a child. But Shen Xinyan couldn't conceive. After hanging up the phone, he sat in the room smoking all night. Somehow, his thoughts turned to Chu Yaoyao. If Shen Xinyan couldn't bear children, then let Chu Yaoyao do it instead. As long as the child was born, he would give the Chu family some benefits and have them send Chu Yaoyao abroad. He would treat that child as if it were his and Shen Xinyan's. He thought this way and acted accordingly. Originally, everything was progressing according to his plan. But now everything has been ruined. The ruthlessness in Zhu Yushen's words instantly drained Chu Yaoyao of all her strength. She listlessly let go of her hands and lowered her head. She had always thought that the reason Zhu Yushen didn't drive her away back then was because he had developed a desire for her body. Although she was the daughter of the Chu family, she had been brought back to the Chu household under the identity of an illegitimate child. Upon arriving at the Chu family, she discovered that apart from the eldest brother being the legitimate child, there were over a dozen illegitimate children like her. Mr. Chu was busy sleeping with women all day, while her mother was constantly scheming to extract more money from him. Thus, she came to deeply understand that in wealthy families, love is the cheapest commodity. Chu Yaoyao also stopped harboring any illusions about love. It's not bad if she can keep him with her body, but later, he treated her better and better, even abandoning Shen Xinyan for her every time. Chu Yaoyoro's heart gradually softened, and her desires grew greedier. She not only wanted to bear his child but also to marry him, to make him completely hers from start to finish. But now he heartlessly told her that the only reason he kept her was because Shen Xinyan couldn't bear children. Zhu Yushen's eyes gradually filled with ruthlessness, yet his voice remained cold and calm. Go for the surgery tomorrow morning when you wake up. After all, since Shen Xinyan had already left, the child in Chu Yaoyoro's womb was no longer of any use. The previously lifeless Chu Yaoyao suddenly raised her head, shaking it incessantly. No, don't, Zhu Yushen. You can't be so cruel. That's your child too. She broke down into loud sobs, pleading with him desperately. The baby in her belly was her lifeline. She absolutely couldn't lose this child. Zhu Yushen didn't even glance at her, turning to leave the hospital room. Chu Yaoyao, desperate, scrambled to her feet to chase after him, but her legs, numb from kneeling too long, suddenly gave way, sending her crashing to the floor. A warm flow gushed from between her legs, staining the white tiles with large patches of red. Chu Yaoyao writhed in agony, her body convulsing as she lay helplessly on the ground. Her blood-covered hand desperately reached out to grasp Zhu Yushen. Yushen, don't go, please, I beg you, save our child. The pain overwhelmed her, her vision went black, and her hands fell limp to the ground as she could only gasp for breath in ragged heaves. Tears of regret streamed from the corners of her eyes. If only she hadn't been so greedy. If only she hadn't gone to provoke Shen Xinyan. Would she not have ended up like this then? But Zhu Yushen just stood there, watching coldly as she writhed in pain until she passed out. He then opened the ward door and called for the nurse on duty. Take the person inside to the operating room. Just make sure she doesn't die. Chapter 12. With that, he didn't spare Chu Yaoyao another glance and went straight back to the villa, looking at the photo of the two of them on the table. Zhu Yushen's heart gradually ached. He held the photo for a long time before finally picking up his phone to call Shen Xinyan's friends and family. Zhu Yushen wanted to ask them if they knew where Shen Xinyan had gone, from the first call to the 99th, whether the answer he received was a permanent no. In the end, he even swallowed his pride and called his mortal enemy. Yet, apart from his enemy's mockery, the answer remained no, soon. The people he had sent out to search for Shen Xinyan's whereabouts also brought back their reply. The answer remains no. Shen Xinyan vanished like a wisp of smoke, leaving no trace behind. He weakly hung up the phone and sat lifelessly in the chair all night. On the other end, Chu Yaoyao struggled in the operating room for a full day and night before finally giving birth to a barely formed male fetus. When she woke up, she saw her mother sitting by the bed. Remembering the grievances of the past few days, her tears couldn't help but flow again. Mom. But before she could finish speaking, Mother Chu slapped her hard across the face. Slap. Mom. Chu Yaoyao covered her swollen cheek, looking at her mother in disbelief. Tears instantly welled up in her eyes. But Mother Chu still felt it wasn't enough and slapped Chu Yaoyao hard again. How could you be the other woman? Chu's mother trembled with anger, but sorrow welled up from the depths of her heart. Last night, the affair between Zhu Yushen and Chu Yaoyao had already spread throughout the entire capital. Even Chu's father had rushed home from another woman's bed overnight to demand an explanation from his wife, although the Beijing social circle is known for its wild parties. It's an unspoken rule that such matters are never brought into the open, let alone made public. Moreover, as the social climate shifts, the older generation has gradually tightened their control over the younger ones. Mr. Chu has also strictly forbidden his children from becoming the other woman, causing fatal incidents, or letting scandals become public knowledge. Now, what Chu Yaoyao has done undoubtedly steps on every single landmine. Moreover, she was even Zhu Yushen's mistress. This group of people had certainly heard about Zhu Yushen's doting on Shen Xinyan. Chu's father didn't care why Zhu Yushen, known for his devoted husband persona, would have an affair. All he knew was how much damage Chu Yaoyao being a mistress would bring to the Chu family. The Chu family's stocks will fall, and the eldest son's marriage, which was originally a done deal, will also be affected. In the end, the furious Mr. Chu ignored his wife's pleas and directly removed Chu Yaoyao from the family registry. He then announced overnight that Chu Yaoyao would no longer have any ties to the Chu family. Mrs. Chu was filled with despair, as someone who had been through it herself. She didn't want Chu Yaoyao to repeat her old path at all. From the very first day Chu's mother entered the Chu household, she had planned out her daughter's entire future, including the choice of her future husband. But now everything has been ruined by Chu Yaoyao. Suppressing the pain in her heart, Chu's mother threw a card at Chu Yaoyao. From now on, you're on your own. After speaking, Chu's mother left resolutely, disregarding Chu Yaoyao's heartbroken sobs. Meanwhile, Zhu family villa. Shen Xinyan's uncle punched Zhu Yushen in the face. Zhu Yushen, is this how you treat my niece? Bang! Zhu Yushen was caught off guard by Uncle Shen's punch, staggering back several steps from the force. But Uncle Shen still wasn't satisfied, throwing another punch at him. The onlookers gasped in shock, yet no one dared to step in and intervene. Uncle Shen had lived most of his life without ever feeling envious or resentful toward anyone. But now, Zhu Yushen had provoked Uncle Shen to the point where his eyes burned with anger, and his voice trembled uncontrollably. When you begged to marry Yang Yang, you made it crystal clear that you would never betray her, yet just a few years later, you've done such a despicable thing. Uncle Shen and Aunt Shun returned to the countryside to retire after their retirement, except for meeting Zhu Yushen once at Shen Xinyan's wedding. This counts as their second meeting, although they rarely met. Zhu Yushen would call them with Shen Xinyan during holidays to send greetings and arrange gifts to be delivered. Only then did Uncle Shen and Aunt Shun feel that their niece had married the right person. But now, the nephew-in-law they once held in such high regard not only cheated but also had a child with his mistress. How could Uncle Shen swallow this insult? Uncle Shen was about to hit him when Aunt Shun suddenly stopped him. Forget it, let's go. What's more important now is to find Shen Xinyan. As for Zhu Yushen, this nephew-in-law, they would act as if he never existed. Only then did Uncle Shen stop, coldly staring at the man he had beaten to the ground. From now on, we'll act as if you don't exist. Yang Yang might as well have never married you. From the moment he learned of Shen Xinyan's divorce and disappearance, Zhu Yushen had been in a daze. Only now, after these punches and words from Uncle Shen, was he finally jolted awake. In a panic, he stood up and tried to chase after her. He wanted to beg them not to be so cruel. He couldn't leave Yang Yang. But as soon as he got up from the ground, everything suddenly went black before his eyes, and he lost consciousness completely. Chapter 13. In the 7th month of Shen Xinyan's stay in the U.S., she received another call from a close friend back home. At that time, she was already living a fairly comfortable life with the money she made from selling Zhu Yushen's shares. She directly bought a building on the busiest street in New York. The 3rd floor and above served as her private space. The 1st floor was rented out to others for a flower shop, and the 2nd floor was leased to a neighbor for a store. Her daily routine consisted of sitting on the balcony, watering the flowers, sipping coffee, and reading the newspaper. Shen Xinyan took a sip of coffee and couldn't help but frown. Even after all this time, she still couldn't get used to the bitter taste of coffee. She placed the coffee cup on the wrought iron table beside her before answering her friend's call. Apart from greeting her, the rest of the conversation was entirely about Zhu Yushen and Chu Yaoyao. Since Zhu Yushen discovered her departure and exposed his affair with Chu Yaoyao, he immediately turned against Chu Yaoyao. Not only did he cause Chu Yaoyao to miscarry, but he was also beaten by Uncle Shen and Aunt Shen. In the end, the Zhu family, upon learning the situation, quickly spent money to suppress these matters. Unfortunately, it was still a step too late, as these matters had already spread throughout the capital like an autumn breeze, because the situation had escalated too far. Not only was Zhu Yushan ordered by the long-reclusive elder Zhu to step down from his position as CEO, but all the shares under his name were also to be reclaimed. It was only at this point that the Zhu family discovered Zhu Yushan had already transferred all his shares to Shen Xinyan. They were all exclusively sold by Shen Xinyan to Zhu's competitors. In the end, the Zhu family had to repurchase these shares at several times the market price. This move not only cost the Zhu family hundreds of billions in losses but also diminished their status in the Beijing elite circle. If it hadn't been for Mrs. Zhu's desperate pleas, Zhu Yushan would have long been expelled from the Zhu family. In the end, Mother Zhu, out of pity for her son, gave him some of her shares. Meanwhile, Zhu Yushan, idle at home, spent his days drowning in alcohol while clutching her photo and calling out her name. As for Chu Yaoyao, ever since her affair as the other woman was exposed, the Chu family cut ties with her, and the headquarters of the fashion magazine where she worked also fired her. Now, she had no other choice but to cling tightly to Zhu Yushan. Zhu Yushan had long lost any feelings for her, and the Zhu family would never let her through their doors. In the end, desperate and with nowhere to turn, she made a scene on the hospital rooftop. Declaring she didn't need to enter the Zhu family's home but had to get the money, the Zhu family refused outright, so in the end, it was Zhu Yushan who paid the sum. As a result, Chu Yaoyao drugged Zhu Yushan again under the pretext of taking money, but this time, she wasn't as lucky as before and was directly sent to prison by Zhu Yushan, who had regained consciousness. After hearing this, Shen Xinyan felt nothing in her heart. After all, Zhu Yushan and Chu Yaoyao were just two people who had nothing to do with her. She casually chatted with her friend for a few moments before hanging up the phone, then stretched and walked into the room. Early the next morning, Shen Xinyan got up and went out to watch a stage play at the opera house with her newly acquainted friend. The tragic yet beautiful love story of the main characters moved the audience to tears, but Shen Xinyan, who had experienced an even more miserable marriage, wasn't the least bit moved. The male and female leads in the stage play were separated due to war, family conflicts, and various other reasons. Yet in the end, even with their hair turned silver, they still found their way back to each other. As for her, though she married the one she fell in love with at first sight years ago and remained deeply attached for so long, didn't Zhu Yushan ultimately betray her in the end? Her wholehearted devotion to the marriage ended in tragedy. As a result, she never believed in love again from then on. So when she was dining with friends at a restaurant and someone confessed their feelings to her, she remained as calm as an emotionless puppet. No matter how many sweet words that blonde, blue-eyed guy said to win her over, she still mercilessly rejected him. The guy still couldn't accept it and wanted to ask her the reason for his rejection. Shen Xinyan was taken aback at first, then let out a light chuckle. I don't want to fall in love. Nor will I ever marry again. In the end, the young man finally lowered his proud head and walked out dejectedly, carrying the flowers. Only then did a few friends snap out of it and quickly pulled her down to sit and eat. Xinyan, aren't you being too heartless, rejecting such a good man? Shen Xinyan's close friends had grown up in the United States and had more liberal mindsets. They all think that as long as they like someone, they can give it a try first, and if it doesn't work out, they can just break up. Shen Xinyan's eyes remained calm, but the corners of her lips curled slightly. It's not that I'm heartless, I just don't have the interest. Chapter 14. The group exchanged glances, then looked at Shen Xinyan, who was focused on cutting her steak and clearly didn't want to continue the conversation. The conversation finally came to a halt. In the evening, Shen Xinyan bid farewell to the friend who had specially driven her home. Only then did she slowly make her way up the stairs to her room. By the time she finished washing up, changed clothes, and stepped out of the bathroom, the housekeeper had already laid out a late-night snack on the table. The housekeeper bowed slightly and quietly withdrew as Shen Xinyan emerged. Shen Xinyan then settled into a chair. Sipping coffee while scrolling through her phone, the bitterness of the coffee filled her throat, but before she could even frown, her phone suddenly vibrated. After answering the call, Shen Xinyan's expression changed abruptly. The phone call was from the village chief of her uncle's village. The village chief hesitantly told Shen Xinyan that ever since her aunt learned about what Zhu Yushen had done, she had fallen seriously ill. Her uncle was both taking care of her aunt and teaching the village children. They hoped she could come back to visit them if she had the time. Shen Xinyan's eyes stung with unshed tears as she hung up the phone. From childhood to adulthood, apart from her parents, her uncle and aunt had treated her the best. During these months abroad, they had often called to remind her to take care of her health and look after herself. Yet they only shared good news, never their troubles. Had the village head not called, she might have remained in the dark for who knows how long. At this thought, she didn't even eat her late-night snack, while asking the butler to book the earliest flight back home for her tomorrow. She also got up to pack her luggage in the walk-in closet, when Uncle Shen and Aunt Shen, who lived far away in the countryside, suddenly saw Shen Xinyan appear before them. They were both surprised and delighted. They quickly pulled her inside and had her sit on the sofa in the living room. "You were doing fine in the U.S. Why did you suddenly come back?" Shen Xinyan placed the gifts in her hands on their table as she spoke. "Just wanted to come back and see you all," Aunt Shen sighed. "You silly child, coming back must have cost you so much money." Seeing the concern on Aunt Shen's face, Shen Xinyan felt a warmth in her heart and took hold of her aunt's hand. "Auntie, I heard you haven't been well these past few months. Tomorrow, I'll take you both to a hospital in the capital for a checkup." Upon hearing this, Aunt Shen immediately waved her hands in refusal. "I'm perfectly healthy. Don't waste that money." Speaking of the past, Aunt Shen's eyes still reddened as she repeatedly apologized to Shen Xinyan. She said if they had known Zhu Yushen would turn out like this, they would never have agreed to marry Shen Xinyan to him. Shen Xinyan had long stopped getting angry over these matters, nor did she blame Uncle Shen and Aunt Shen. After all, she had known long ago that Chu Yaoyao didn't like her. The moment Chu Yaoyao first laid eyes on Zhu Yushen, she had already provoked Shen Xinyan. "Xinyanjie, do you believe that in the end, he'll become my man?" The competitive fire in Chu Yaoyao's eyes was so intense, yet Shen Xinyan didn't take it to heart at all. After all, Zhu Yushen had loved her so much back then. Even if every man in the world would cheat, Zhu Yushen would never cheat. Yet reality gave her a harsh slap in the face. Fortunately, when this incident occurred, her family and friends all stood by her side, outraged on her behalf. Even the Chu family cut ties with Chu Yaoyao. But in such matters, the one who truly deserves condemnation is Zhu Yushen. If Zhu Yushen was unwilling to cheat, then no matter how Chu Yaoyao tried to seduce him, he wouldn't respond. Yet, against all odds, he found himself moved by Chu Yaoyao's repeated provocations. Chapter 15. Shen Xinyan still insisted on taking Uncle Shen and Aunt Shen to a hospital in the capital for a checkup. Aunt Shen's condition was somewhat concerning, and the doctor recommended hospitalization for a few days for observation. So that very day, Shen Xinyan arranged for her aunt to be admitted directly into the VIP ward. To make it easier to care for Aunt Shen, Shen Xinyan not only hired a nursing assistant to help, she also had someone rent a courtyard house near the hospital, so Uncle Shen would have a place to rest after taking care of Aunt Shen. Watching this, Uncle and Aunt Shen felt heartbroken in their hearts. They secretly tried to give money to Shen Xinyan, but she quietly returned it to them. Uncle Shen and Aunt Shen had no choice but to drop the matter. That day, after Shen Xinyan finished handing over the night shift to the caregiver, she decided to go out and make a call to have 4 meals delivered to the hospital from Sui Xinyuan. But just as she reached the hospital corridor, a nurse suddenly cried out in alarm ahead, "Make way, quickly, there's a critically ill patient needing surgery. Make way quickly." Hearing this, people in the corridor immediately pressed themselves against the walls to clear a path. Watching as several nurses and doctors rushed past pushing a gurney, the moment she saw the patient on the gurney, Shen Xinyan froze in shock. Is that person up there Zhu Yushen? If she hadn't spent 5 years living closely with Zhu Yushen, she definitely wouldn't have recognized him just now. After all, the current Zhu Yushen is completely different from how he used to be. His gaunt face was devoid of any color, and his entire body was enveloped in a strong smell of alcohol, making people nearby instinctively cover their noses. Shen Xinyan pinched her palm, just as she was about to continue walking out. Then she heard the people beside her whispering, "Did I see correctly just now? Was that Zhu Yushan? How did he end up like this? He deserved it. He was living happily with his wife, but he had to go and cheat with that daughter of the Chu family. They say ever since his wife left, he's been drinking heavily all day long, and ends up in the hospital every now and then." Shen Xinyan didn't catch the rest of the conversation as she walked towards the end of the hallway. A gust of autumn wind blew in through the window, making her instinctively tighten her coat against the chill. After finishing the phone call, she sat quietly on the nearby chair, waiting. Soon, a few more people arrived and sat on the chairs opposite Shen Xinyan, chatting idly. "Hey, have you heard that Chu Yaoyao has been released from prison? Cough, who did you say? How could she be out? Wasn't she supposed to serve several more years?" The person who first brought up the topic glanced around before whispering in a hushed tone. "My brother-in-law, who works in the prison, told me that Chu Yaoyao is pregnant again. That thing back then actually worked. Not long after she was imprisoned, it was discovered that she was pregnant, but Zhu Yushan kept suppressing it, refusing to let her out, and even said he would take her for an abortion. Who would have thought that before they could send Chu Yaoyao for the abortion, he himself fell first? The Zhu family feared he might end up childless if this continued. So they took matters into their own hands and brought Chu Yaoyao to the old mansion. They simply instructed people to take good care of her, saying that once her child was born, she would be sent away immediately and never allowed to return to the capital again. Shen Xinyan listened in a daze until a staff member from Suishan Garden handed her a large box. She snapped back to reality and thanked them, then carried the food container back to the ward. Just as she stood up, the autumn wind blew again, sending a shiver down her spine from the cold. Back in the ward, Shen Xinyan handed one portion of the meal to the caregiver nearby. The caregiver thanked her while carrying the food out, leaving the space to the three of them. During the meal, Shen Xinyan was absent-minded because of what she had just heard. Aunt Shen kept putting food into her bowl while showing concern. "Yang, what's wrong with you?" Shen Xinyan snapped back to reality and quickly smiled, saying it was nothing. She was just thinking that not only was Zhu Yushan in this hospital now, but even Chu Yaoyao would come here for her prenatal checkups. If her uncle and aunt were to run into either of them, wouldn't her aunt get so angry she'd fall ill again? She had to find a way to keep her uncle and aunt from encountering those two. Chapter 16. But what Shen Xinyan didn't know was that Zhu's parents would never allow Chu Yaoyao to leave the house. From the day Chu Yaoyao was released from prison and brought to the Zhu family, they assigned someone to watch her around the clock. Even for prenatal checkups, they directly sent people to take her to the military hospital. They weren't afraid of Chu Yaoyao running away, either. After all, the Zhu family had connections throughout the capital. Where could she possibly escape to? The reason they didn't take her to the hospital where Zhu Yushan was staying was simply because they knew their son despised Chu Yaoyao. If Zhu Yushan found out that Chu Yaoyao had been taken out of prison to rest during her pregnancy, the child in her belly wouldn't be safe at all. And Chu Yaoyao had never even thought of escaping. After all, she had learned her lesson from her time in prison. She knew very well that her current situation depended entirely on the child in her womb. As long as the child is born safely, she will never have to worry about food or clothing for the rest of her life. So now, whatever the Zhu family asks her to do, she can only obediently comply. She doesn't even dare to lose her temper at the servants. Everyone thought they had kept it perfectly hidden. But despite all their calculations, Mr. and Mrs. Zhu overlooked one person, Zhu Yushan's butler. That day, the butler had come to the old house to fetch a change of clothes for Zhu Yushan, and he happened to witness the entire scene. He also saw Mrs. Zhu ordering the servants to keep their mouths shut. The butler left secretly without even taking his clothes. Zhu Yushan, waking up in the hospital, grew impatient at the butler's hesitant expression. What's wrong at home now? Since Shen Xinyan left, Zhu Yushan's temperament has changed a lot. The butler couldn't care about anything else and quickly told about the Ju family taking Chu Yaoyao out of prison to rest during her pregnancy. The butler also mentioned that in order to protect Chu Yaoyoro's pregnancy, Ju's mother specifically ordered that no one was to tell Ju Yushin about it. After speaking, the butler stood aside cautiously, watching Ju Yushin, afraid that he might get angry. Surprisingly, Ju Yushin merely waved his hand to dismiss the butler after hearing the news. Only after the butler closed the door did Ju Yushin casually toss the orange in his hand aside, lying on the bed and staring blankly at the ceiling. If those events hadn't happened back then, perhaps Shen Xinyan would have been pregnant with their child by now. The boy would resemble him, and the girl would surely take after her. Whether it's a boy or a girl, the child's face would surely bear traces of both him and Shen Xinyan. He covered his face in despair and let out a bitter laugh. But those things had to happen. Now, he didn't even know where she was. How could they possibly have children? At night, the nurse who came to change his dressing, seeing him all alone, couldn't help but advise him to find someone to take care of himself. The nurse also mentioned a patient in the VIP ward downstairs, whose husband not only stayed by her side to care for her, but even her niece flew back from abroad overnight, not only hiring a caregiver but also staying by her side every moment. The nurse recalled Shen Xinyan's appearance and couldn't help but sigh, wondering if such a sensible and filial woman like her was already married. The nurse spoke earnestly, failing to notice Ju Yushin suddenly clenching his hand tightly. After a long silence, he suddenly spoke up and asked, "Do you know what the niece's surname is?" The nurse paused, then spoke uncertainly, "I think the surname was Shen." "Ah, I'm not really sure." With that, the nurse pushed the cart and walked out again. But the moment the nurse closed the door, Ju Yushin threw off the covers, put on his shoes, and rushed out. As he approached Aunt Shen's hospital room, Ju Yushin's heart grew increasingly excited. "It's her. It must be her. It's Shen Xinyan." At first, Ju Yushin didn't pay much attention to the nurse's words and didn't listen carefully. It wasn't until the nurse mentioned Shen Xinyan's appearance, specifically the teardrop mole at the corner of her eye. Only then did Ju Yushin start to feel suspicious. Among all the people he knew, Shen Xinyan was the only one with a teardrop mole. That was when he began to get excited, especially when the nurse said the niece's surname was Shen. He finally confirmed it was Shen Xinyan. She had returned, and was so close to him. Chapter 17. Ju Yushin, disregarding his own frail condition after a serious illness, hurried downstairs and began searching through the wards one by one. At that moment, his body suddenly stiffened as a slender figure appeared before him. Yang Yang. His body reacted faster than his thoughts. Without another moment's hesitation, he immediately chased after Shen Xinyan. He feared that if he were even a second later, Shen Xinyan might vanish from sight. Hearing that familiar voice in the distance, Shen Xinyan's hand, which had been about to close the hospital room door, suddenly paused. She instinctively turned around and saw Ju Yushin striding toward her. Shen Xinyan turned and ran downstairs without hesitation. She didn't have time to think about how Ju Yushin had discovered she was here. She absolutely didn't want to see him right now. Without a second thought, Shen Xinyan dashed out of the hospital and hastily flagged down a taxi. "Driver, go quickly." At this very moment, Ju Yushin also caught up, knocking on the car window. "Yang Yang, Yang Yang, listen to me, please, don't go." Shen Xinyan completely ignored him and directly urged the driver to hurry up. The car's tail disappeared before his eyes, and Ju Yushin instinctively wanted to chase after it. His stomach suddenly contracted violently, the pain forcing him to instinctively bend over and clutch his abdomen. At that moment, a sharp shout rang out. Ju Yushin, Uncle Shen, who had just arrived to take over Shen Xinyan's shift, was filled with rage at the sight. He punched Ju Yushin in the face. "How dare you still come looking for Yang Yang?" After speaking, Father Ju threw another punch at Ju Yushin. Already unsteady from stomach pain, Ju Yushin collapsed to the ground after this punch from Uncle Shen. Ju Yushin's face turned deathly pale as he reached out, trying to grasp at something. But Uncle Shen didn't even glance at him, turning and walking away without a second thought. "Get out, don't let me see you again." After this incident, Uncle Shen and Aunt Shen were both angry and heartbroken. They were angry because Ju Yushin had the audacity to come looking for Shen Xinyan after all this time. What broke their hearts was that Shen Xinyan had finally freed herself from Ju Yushin, only to be entangled with him again because of Aunt Shen's hospitalization. Aunt Shen was so anxious that she wanted to be discharged from the hospital immediately and return to the countryside. So that Shen Xinyan could go back to the United States sooner, Shen Xinyan was so startled that she quickly held Aunt Shen back, and it took a lot of persuasion before Aunt Shen gave up the idea. From the very first day Shen Xinyan returned to the capital, she knew that she would eventually cross paths with Ju Yushin. After all, the capital was the Ju family's territory. As long as Ju Yushin wanted, he could have come after her the moment her plane landed. Shen Xinyan recalled the scene of Ju Yushin knocking on the taxi window, pleading with her outside the car. She let out a long sigh in her heart. What good explanation could he possibly have? She had written everything that needed to be said and done clearly on that piece of paper. If he could understand it, he shouldn't have come looking for her. But Ju Yushin had finally managed to see her again. How could he possibly give up so easily? He had so much to say to her. He wants to clarify everything between him and Chu Yao Yao. He doesn't love Chu Yao Yao, he only wants Shen Xinyan. But since that day, Shen Xinyan seems to be avoiding him. He waited for several days in front of Aunt Shen's hospital room, only to receive cold stares from Uncle Shen and Aunt Shen, along with gossip from others. He didn't even catch a glimpse of Shen Xinyan's shadow. That night, Ju Yushin waited late into the night but still didn't see Shen Xinyan appear. Just as he clenched his fists and was about to get up and leave, a slender figure slowly emerged from the end of the corridor. Ju Yushin's previously dim eyes instantly lit up. Yang Yang. Shen Xinyan stopped in her tracks, looking coldly at the person before her. Then she walked straight past him and closed the hospital room door. Aunt Shen had been moved to a different room this morning, but some belongings were left in the original one. Shen Xinyan had originally planned to come back late at night to retrieve it, never expecting he would still be waiting here. Chapter 18. Only when the sound of the door closing echoed did Ju Yushin snap back to reality, hurriedly patting the hospital room door that Shen Xinyan had shut. Yang Yang, I know you're listening. Please, just hear me out, okay? I didn't mean to hide this from you. Back then, she took advantage of my drunken state and climbed into my bed. I originally intended to deal with her right then, but my parents called pressuring us about having children. I couldn't bear the thought of you going through childbirth, so perhaps Ju Yushin also found the subsequent words too embarrassing, as he couldn't bring himself to utter those final few sentences. Yet both of them understood. With just a door between them, Shen Xinyan leaned against it, her eyes brimming with irony. If he couldn't bear to see her live, how could he bear to see her suffer? The pain in the heart hurts much more than physical pain. On the day she found out about his infidelity, her heart ached so badly she could barely breathe. In the past, under his meticulous care, she rarely needed to go to the hospital, but that day, she suffered from respiratory alkalosis due to extreme grief and almost didn't make it off the operating table. What was he doing at that time? He was on Chu Yaoiro's bed. Moreover, he had many better ways to solve these problems. Yet he chose the most embarrassing one. And even if he had dismissed Chu Yao Yao with money at that time, after all, she was still a woman he had slept with. With his possessiveness, wouldn't he still secretly go find Chu Yao Yao behind her back later? The most fundamental solution would have been to return directly to the master bedroom after getting drunk that day. Actually, even before Chu Yao Yao climbed into his bed, his attitude toward her had gradually become strange. In the past, his lips would only utter her name when speaking of women, but gradually, Chu Yaoiro's name began appearing more and more. Looking back now, Chu Yaoiro's initiative to climb into bed only gave him a legitimate excuse to cheat. Shen Xinyan closed her eyes in pain, ignoring Ju Yushin's pleas outside the door. Refusing to respond, the hour hand on the wall clock circled several times, yet the person outside continued to beg her pitifully. It seemed he wouldn't relent unless she gave him a definitive answer. Ju Yushin's intermittent voice not only irritated Shen Xinyan but also kept the neighboring patients from sleeping. The person next door initially wanted to come out and scold him. However, upon clearly seeing Ju Yushin's face, They swallowed the words they intended to say. In the end, they reluctantly closed the ward door. Ju Yushen finally turned his head, just about to continue speaking when the tightly closed ward door was suddenly opened from inside. Yang Yang, the joyful smile on his face froze instantly upon seeing Shen Xinyan's icy gaze. Ju Yushen, perhaps because Shen Xinyan had spent some time abroad, her accent had become somewhat peculiar. Her voice, once gentle, had now turned cold and detached. Everything that needed to be said was made clear that day. You keep saying you love me, but you slept with Chu Yao Yao just so I wouldn't get pregnant. But every time after that, wasn't it you who initiated it? I've seen every single one of your encounters, even heard them. Shen Xinyan clenched her palms tightly, even though so much time had passed, yet when she thought of Ju Yushen and Chu Yao's entanglement, she still couldn't accept it. It still made her sick to her stomach. Once tainted, always tainted. Stop making excuses for yourself. Our relationship ended the day you cheated, completely and irrevocably. Shen Xinyan withdrew her gaze and stopped looking at him, preparing to leave with the items in her hand, but Ju Yushen panicked and reached out to grab her hand. No, it's not like that. I'm not dirty. Yang Yang, if you think I'm dirty, I'll go wash myself clean right away. Don't say these break-up words to me, okay? Shen Xinyan forcefully pulled her restrained hand free, smiling mockingly. Then you shouldn't have cheated in the first place either. He was the one she fell in love with at first sight, the one she could rely on the most, the one she entrusted her life to. Yet he had to cheat. Ju Yushen, why did you cheat on me? Why did you have to fool around with another woman in bed every time I needed you? Why can you say you love me without blushing or feeling guilty after cheating on me with another woman? Chapter 19. Shen Xinyan's voice remained calm, yet it transformed into the sharpest dagger, piercing straight into his heart. Ju Yushen was cornered step by step until he hit the wall with a thud, leaving him with no way out. Ju Yushen's face turned completely pale. He opened his mouth, only to find himself unable to utter a word. Shen Xinyan abruptly withdrew her body, the mocking smile at the corner of her lips also vanishing. You can't even answer such a basic question for me. What else can you explain? Ju Yushen, if possible, I'd rather have never met you in the first place. That way she wouldn't have to be hurt by him over and over again, nor suffer for so long. Shen Xinyan looked at the person before her, his eyes filled with pain. He explained a lot, but those words seemed so feeble in the face of his infidelity. Apart from adding a few jokes, it serves no other purpose. Shen Xinyan gazed at him quietly, her eyes devoid of any emotion. Finally, after waiting for Ju Yushen to finish his explanation, she spoke calmly. Finished explaining. Ju Yushen paused, then quickly nodded, looking at her with visible tension, just like a child awaiting the outcome of their punishment. Unfortunately, Shen Xinyan didn't give him any response. She had already wasted too much time with him. If she didn't return soon, Uncle Shen and Aunt Shen would surely worry. Shen Xinyan turned and walked away, leaving only one sentence behind: let's not meet again. As soon as the words fell, Ju Yushen shrank to the ground in an instant. Watching her retreating figure with despair, does she really hate him this much, not even willing to give him a single chance? After a long while, a bitter smile escaped the corner of his lips. Perhaps Shen Xinyan's words had taken effect, as she didn't see Ju Yushen's figure in the following days. After Aunt Shen recovered from her illness and was discharged from the hospital, Shen Xinyan had Uncle Shen and Aunt Shen stay in the courtyard house. She said she would take them around the capital properly before returning to the countryside. That day, taking advantage of Uncle Shen and Aunt Shen's afternoon nap, Shen Xinyan finally prepared to go out for a stroll. As soon as she opened the door, she saw the former butler and servants from the villa standing at the entrance. Noticing Shen Xinyan's appearance, several of the maids quickly stepped forward and surrounded her. Miss Shen, we heard you had returned to the country and wanted to come see you. Did you hear? Apart from Ju Yushen, almost no one knew about Shen Xinyan's return to the country. She suppressed the fleeting coldness in her eyes and invited them inside to sit. However, the butler and several servants repeatedly declined, choosing to stand at the door to explain their purpose. After Shen Xinyan left, they returned all the gifts she had given them to Ju Yushen. However, within a few days, Zhu Yushan bought them new gifts again. He said it was to thank them for taking care of Shen Xinyan over the years. Since they had accepted Zhu Yushan's gifts, they still felt the need to express their gratitude, so he thought of coming to persuade her. After all, they had once been husband and wife. Zhu Yushan now deeply realizes his mistakes. He hopes Shen Xinyan can also give Zhu Yushan a chance to make amends, seeing Zhu Yushan in such a despondent state these days. They couldn't bear it either. Shen Xinyan found it utterly ridiculous in her heart. Seeing that he couldn't persuade her himself, Zhu Yushan had brought others to try and convince her. She understood that they meant well, so she simply smiled without saying a word. The butler and a few servants, seeing this, also felt it inappropriate to say more. After exchanging a few casual words with Shen Xinyan, they left, thanks to Zhu Yushan's interference. Shen Xinyan no longer felt like going out for a stroll, so she closed the door and went back to her room to take a nap. This nap was extremely restless for Shen Xinyan. During those 3 months abroad, she hadn't dreamed of Zhu Yushan even once. Yet today, she dreamed of him again, and the scene was actually at their wedding. Chapter 20. In the dream, Zhu Yushan knelt on one knee. He held the wedding ring he had carved himself, gazing affectionately at the girl in white before him. Yang Yang. Will you marry me? I will be loyal to you, love you, and accompany you for the rest of my life. I will never betray you. Finally, the girl in front of him moved slightly, revealing a delicate yet unfamiliar face. It wasn't her, it was Chu Yao Yao, but Zhu Yushan seemed not to recognize Chu Yao Yao, still gazing at her with deep emotion. Just as Chu Yao Yao was about to speak, Shen Xinyan suddenly woke up from her dream. She stared blankly out the window, feeling it had been a very strange dream. Knock knock. Yang Yang, are you awake? Aunt Shen's voice suddenly came from outside the door. Shen Xinyan patted her face and quickly responded, I'm up, Auntie. Only then did Aunt Shen push the door open and hand her the invitation in her hand, saying it was sent by her friend. Shen Xinyan then remembered that she had run into an old friend shortly after returning to the country and had casually chatted with them for a while. When they parted ways, the friend had asked for her address, saying they would send her a wedding invitation in a few days. Shen Xinyan thanked them and took the letter, opening it to find it was indeed the wedding invitation from her good friend. After all, they had been close friends for many years, so Shen Xinyan got up early the next day to go to the mall and buy a gift for her friend. Just as she reached the second floor, she suddenly saw a large group of people approaching from the opposite direction. They were walking toward Shen Xinyan's side while making way for pedestrians. She quickly stepped aside and hid in a nearby store to let the group pass. As the group passed by her, she suddenly felt something and glanced at them. The next moment, her eyes widened abruptly. Was that Chu Yao Yao? If Chu Yao Yao used to resemble a delicate, blooming flower, now she looked like an elderly woman in her twilight years. She was so thin that only bones remained. Yet she carried an enormous belly. She looked utterly lifeless. Not only was Shen Xinyan shocked by Chu Yaoyao's current appearance, but even the passers-by around her couldn't help but whisper, is that Chu Yao Yao? Am I seeing this right? How did she end up looking like this? Doesn't the Zhu family feed her? Someone nearby scoffed mockingly. Who said they wouldn't give it? My sister who works at the Zhu family told me they're practically spoon-feeding her now. Too bad she's done so many bad things. She has no luck at all. Whatever she eats, she throws up. On top of that, after Zhu Yushan found out she was pregnant again, he's been finding ways to torment her every day. If it weren't for Madame Zhu keeping an eye on things, the child would have been gone long ago. Now that they see how miserable she really is, the Zhu family finally let her out to get some fresh air. Shen Xinyan concealed the complex emotions in her eyes and walked toward another store. Everyone thought that once Chu Yao Yao was taken out of prison by the Zhu family, she would live a good life. But now it seems that's not the case. Even when going out to relax, someone has to keep an eye on her 24/7, as if she's on parole. Unfortunately, she wouldn't show any pity towards Chu Yao Yao, as all of this was brought upon by Chu Yao Yao herself. Shen Xinyan didn't dwell on it any longer and focused her attention on selecting a gift on the day of her friend's wedding. The venue was now decorated with an exceptionally warm and cozy atmosphere. Shen Xinyan watched the newlyweds kissing with tears, her eyes still slightly reddening at the corners. She sincerely hoped her friend would be happy. Just then, a large hand handed her a handkerchief, and she followed the arm to look up. At first glance, she saw Zhu Yushen. In the next second, the smile that had just been on her lips vanished instantly. At that moment, the ceremony happened to end. And Shen Xinyan didn't even stay for the meal. After asking someone nearby to relay a message to her friend, she got up and headed straight for the door. Only then did she finally remember that today's bride was not only her good friend but also Zhu Yushen's college classmate. Zhu Yushen watched as she left and, without a second thought, immediately got up to chase after her. Yang Yang. Zhu Yushen grabbed Shen Xinyan's hand and pinned her against the wall. Yang Yang. I can answer the question you asked me last time now. At that time, I only thought about sparing you the pain of childbirth, so I had Chu Yao Yao carry the child for us. I treat her well only because I'm afraid something might happen to her child, since you don't like Chu Yao Yao or this child. How about I take care of both of them for you? Chapter 21. After saying all this, he looked at her with hopeful eyes, as if with just her nod, he could immediately dispose of Chu Yao Yao and the child in her womb. Shen Xinyan looked at the person before her, her eyes tinged with disappointment. He had said so much, yet he placed all the blame for his infidelity on her. Or was it because he pitied her for giving birth that he sought Chu Yao Yao instead? Even now, he still thought she left him because of Chu Yao Yao. Seeing that she didn't respond, he thought she had agreed. The mere thought that as long as he got rid of Chu Yao Yao and the child in her womb, Shen Xinyan would return to him, he grew increasingly excited, even feeling an irresistible urge to kiss her. Slap. Before he could lean in for the kiss, Shen Xinyan's slap landed on his face first. Zhu Yushen, have you lost your mind? It was only then that Shen Xinyan realized Zhu Yushen had never once considered that the failure of their marriage might be his own fault. He even naively believed that if he could just solve the problem, she would return to his side. The biggest problem clearly lies with him. At the thought of Zhu Yushen, who he used to be, now about to harm 2 lives, her words were filled with disappointment. How did you become like this? Why don't you consider whether the problem might be with yourself? Zhu Yushen covered his tilted face, stunned for a long moment before letting out a bitter laugh. Yes, I've gone mad. Every single day after you left, I've been having nightmares. In my dreams, you always leave me in different ways, abandoning me. I'm going crazy from these nightmares. Now, as long as I can win you back, I'll try any method. After speaking, he no longer looked at her and turned to disappear into the heavy rain. Zhu Yushen, no matter how Shen Xinyan shouted, he didn't stop his steps. Madman. But before Zhu Yushen could act, Chu Yao Yao went into premature labor again. The baby was immediately placed in an incubator after birth. Yet within 3 days, the child still lost its breath. Mrs. Zhu, who had brought Chu Yao Yao to the hospital, glanced at the lifeless child with a hint of regret in her eyes. Truly a child without fortune. Seeing that Chu Yao Yao was of no use anymore, Mrs. Zhu withdrew all the people who had been taking care of her, leaving only a final command. Take the money and get as far away as possible. Soon the hospital room became empty. Chu Yao Yao clutched the bank card, finally unable to hold back her sobs. Gone, all gone. The Chu family didn't want her, and Zhu Yushen didn't want her either. Even the child she struggled for 3 days and 3 nights to give birth to has abandoned her. She broke down in tears, but not a single person came to comfort or pity her, the nurse passing by outside. Upon hearing Chu Yoro's heart-wrenching and desperate cries, merely rolled her eyes in silence. But before the nurse could finish rolling her eyes, a tall figure suddenly appeared before her. The nurse was so frightened that she quickly bowed and left. Good day, Mr. Zhu. Zhu Yushen didn't even acknowledge the nurse and went straight to stand in front of Chu Yoro's ward. Only when the crying inside gradually subsided did he push the door open and enter. The same room, the same 2 people. Chu Yao Yao looked at him, first stunned, then instantly filled with hatred. Zhu Yushen, are you satisfied now? I've become like this all because of you. I have nothing left now. Looking at Chu Yoro's ferocious expression, Zhu Yushen let out a cold laugh. Satisfied? I still think it's too light. The thought of him being played like a fool by such a woman, causing Shen Xinyan to leave him, a surge of rage suddenly flared up in his heart. He strode forward, gripping her chin with one hand, his voice as cold as winter. You should be grateful that your child didn't survive, otherwise, you should have left with it too. Chapter 22. The hatred in Chu Yaroro's eyes was completely drowned by terror. During those days of pregnancy at the Zhu family, she had clearly understood Zhu Yushen's methods. Even though Mrs. Zhu had people watching her around the clock, Zhu Yushen's men still found ways to sneak in and frame her. If she hadn't been lucky, she would have long since died without a sound. Feeling the trembling of the person in his hands, Zhu Yushen's eyes darkened. If it weren't for Shen Xinyan disliking his wrongdoing, Chu Yao wouldn't have survived until now. Fortunately, the child in her belly wasn't saved, sparing him another trouble. Zhu Yushen disdainfully pushed her away, casually wiping his hands with a handkerchief. Get as far away from me as possible from now on. If I ever see you again, you'd be in a much worse state than this. After leaving the warning, Zhu Yushen slammed the hospital room door shut. That vicious warning sent a shiver down Chu Yaroro's spine. Instinctively, she gradually tightened her grip on the blanket in her hands. On the other side of the capital, Shen Xinyan reluctantly saw off her uncle and aunt as they boarded the special car back to their hometown. Only then did she head towards the courtyard house. Now that the most important matter in China for Shen Xinyan had been resolved, it was time for her to return to the United States. After all, staying in China would only bring unnecessary troubles and nothing else. Thinking of this, she quickened her steps home. She thought that since it was still early, she would go to the neighbor's grandfather to return the rented courtyard house. What, you're saying someone has already bought this house and given it to me? Upon hearing the neighbor's grandfather's words, Shen Xinyan's eyes widened instantly. The old man lay in the rocking chair, fanning himself with a palm leaf fan as he handed her the property purchase documents. Look, your name is even written here. Shen Xinyan took them skeptically and immediately saw her name glaring at her from a corner of the document. Frowning at the familiar handwriting, she furrowed her brows. Just as she was about to say something, she saw the old man pointing at the door with his palm leaf fan. Look, that's the person who bought the house for you. She raised her eyes and saw a figure standing in the doorway against the light, gazing at her with the same tenderness as years ago. Yang, what do you mean by this, Zhu Yushen? Shen Xinyan thanked the old man while pulling Zhu Yushen outside. I don't need you to do this at all. A flash of pain crossed Zhu Yushen's eyes as he tried to embrace her, but she broke free from his grasp. Yang, that was my compensation for you. I've already resolved the biggest issue between us. Chu Yao lost the child, and she will never bother us again. So can you give me another chance? Shen Xinyan shook her head. Opportunity, Zhu Yushen. I did consider giving you a chance. Zhu Yushen's eyes instantly lit up, only to dim again when she spoke her next words. If you had entered the master bedroom that day, or if you had confessed everything to me the next day, maybe there's still a chance for us. But how did you do it? Holding Chu Yao in every corner of the house, even making wild love right beside her. That day, when you were with her on the rooftop, I realized even your brothers knew about your affair. She tucked her cold hands into her pockets and let out a soft sigh. At that moment, I wondered if I was the only fool in this world. Zhu Yushen clenched his hand at his side as he heard her continue, to the point where everyone was willing to help you keep it from me. Shen Xinyan smiled. So to punish you, I specifically demanded all the shares under your name on the day of the birthday banquet. Right now, I don't lack this courtyard house at all. Even if you bought it to give to me, it would be useless. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned to leave, only to be immediately pulled into a warm embrace. She lowered her gaze to the hands encircling her waist and was about to pull them away. The person behind her spoke with a tremble. Yang, I'm sorry. Shen Xinyan's words finally woke him up, and he was at last willing to face the mistakes he had made. Since he was wrong, he would apologize and make it up to Shen Xinyan, hoping that Shen Xinyan could forgive him and turn back to him. But his apology came too late for Shen Xinyan. His apology could have been said the day after he slept with Chu Yao, or perhaps it should have been said when she still held illusions about him. But it absolutely cannot be said after her heart has completely died towards him. Chapter 23. Shen Xinyan remained silent for a long time before pulling his hand away and leaving directly. Yang, in agony, he stopped her and asked why she wouldn't give him a chance. From the first day he saw Shen Xinyan again, he had been trying to win her back. But no matter how he explained or what he did, she remained unmoved. You clearly loved me so much before, why can't you give me another chance? If you dislike the traces of Chu Yaro living in our home, I'll sell the house. If you find the gifts I gave you before unpleasant to look at, I'll buy you new ones. If you think I'm dirty, I'll take more showers. Then what if it's your heart that's dirty? Shen Xinyan suddenly spoke up, only to find him unable to answer for a long time. She smiled, no longer giving him another glance, leaving him alone where he stood. The next day, Shen Xinyan began packing her bags, preparing to return to the United States. Originally, she had planned to take Uncle Shen and Aunt Shun with her to America. But Uncle Shen and Aunt Shun had spent their entire lives in the countryside and couldn't bear to part with this land. Seeing this, Shen Xinyan didn't say anything more, however, before leaving. She secretly slipped a bank card under her uncle and aunt's pillow when they weren't looking. Next, she arranged to have dinner with her close friends back home. During the meal, the thought of her leaving again brought a wave of sadness to her friend's heart. With you leaving like this, who knows when we'll meet again? When we get the chance in the future, we'll come visit you in America. Shen Xinyan nodded and exchanged addresses with her friends. Making it easier for them to find her in America when they came to visit, everyone chatted with Shen Xinyan while drinking one glass after another. Shen Xinyan was about to call the waiter to refill her tea after finishing the last sip in her cup. Just then, a heavily intoxicated friend waved his hand and insisted on going to get her tea himself. Everyone quickly tried to persuade him to sit back down, but the man refused to listen and picked up the teapot, heading straight out of the private room. Moments later, the sound of a heated argument erupted from outside. The people in the private room exchanged glances and rushed out immediately. They saw their friends from earlier pushing and shoving with a few drunk people from the opposite group. Shen Xinyan's heart tightened, and she quickly moved forward with her friends to try to break up the fight. At that moment, someone from the opposite side picked up a beer bottle from somewhere and swung it straight at her head. Yang. A panicked voice suddenly rang out above Shen Xinyan's head. The next second, she was firmly caught in Zhu Yushen's arms as he rushed over. Bang! The wine bottle shattered instantly, fragments falling to the ground along with the blood dripping from his head. In an instant, the entire restaurant fell silent. Murder. Screams and shouts erupted into chaos. Zhu Yushen, however, could care about nothing else, frantically checking Shen Xinyan from head to toe. Only after confirming she was unharmed did he finally let out a sigh of relief. Shen Xinyan watched his anxious demeanor with a cold gaze and said, Zhu Yushen, you didn't need to block for me, I would have dodged it myself. During those 6 months abroad, she had specifically taken combat training to protect herself. If he hadn't been there just now, she would have already knocked that person to the ground. Zhu Yushen's hands, which had been gripping her shoulders, suddenly slipped away. She was telling him that even without him, she could live just fine, unlike him, who had gone mad after losing her, hiding at home and drinking all day. Just as he was about to say something, the restaurant manager, having heard the news, hurried over with a group of people. The manager had someone urgently treat Zhu Yushen's wounds while simultaneously dealing with the chaos at the scene. Chapter 24. Yet Zhu Yushen remained motionless, standing in place. Even reaching out to grab Shen Xinyan's hand, Shen Xinyan directly pushed his hand away and was about to take the heavily intoxicated person to the hospital with a few friends. But one friend politely declined her offer, saying that the purpose of today's dinner was originally to bid her farewell. But in the end, it turned out like this. They were already overwhelmed with guilt, how could they possibly trouble her further? With that, the friend nudged her, urging her to go back early and pack her luggage. Shen Xinyan couldn't say anything more, so she turned and walked out. Zhu Yushen had been watching her from the side when he heard her friend tell her to go home early to pack her luggage. His heart suddenly panicked, and he grabbed her hand tightly. Yang, where are you going this time to pack your luggage? After the blood on Zhu Yushen's forehead was treated, only a ferocious wound remained. along with those panicked eyes beneath the wound, making his entire appearance seem both pitiful and laughable. Shen Xinyan didn't answer, only wanting to withdraw the hand he had grabbed, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't break free from him. Instead, he pulled her tightly into his embrace. "Tell me, where exactly are you going?" Zhu Yushen's voice trembled, yet Shen Xinyan remained as cold as ever. "Yang Yang." Shen Xinyan finally looked up at the person before her and replied indifferently, "What does it matter to you where I'm going?" Taking advantage of Zhu Yushen's momentary daze, she shook off his hand and strode toward the door. "Yang Yang," just as Zhu Yushen was about to chase after her, a tremendous force slammed into him the next instant. Bang! Shen Xinyan whirled around in horror at the scene before her eyes. Since Zhu Yushen became disabled in a car accident, he has been lifeless and gloomy. All day long, he clutches his wedding photo with Shen Xinyan, endlessly calling out her name. Unable to bear seeing him like this, everyone came to persuade Shen Xinyan. After all, they were once husband and wife, she should at least go see him. But each time, Shen Xinyan firmly refused. What was there to see? Her deep affection with Zhu Yu had long since ended. In the end, everyone could only sigh and leave. That day, after Shen Xinyan once again sent away someone who had come to persuade her to visit Zhu Yushen in the hospital, just as she was about to close the door, a middle-aged woman's voice suddenly called out from a distance. "Wait a moment." Shen Xinyan looked up and saw Zhu's mother standing before her. Her eyes filled with the weariness of time. A cup of hot tea was handed to Zhu's mother by Shen Xinyan. Zhu's mother thanked her and took it, sipping the tea before stating her purpose for coming. She still hoped Shen Xinyan would visit Zhu Yushen in the hospital. Seeing the faint plea in Zhu's mother's eyes, Shen Xinyan momentarily lost her composure. From the first day of marriage, Mother Zhu intensely disliked her. No matter what she did, Mother Zhu would find fault, and the look in her eyes was always icy. This was the first time she had seen such an expression in Mother Zhu's eyes. Shen Xinyan tightened her grip on the teacup and still uttered an apology. "Our marital bond has come to an end. Now, not hating him is already the greatest concession I can make." After hearing her rejection, Mother Zhu seemed to age another year, but the thought of her son confined to a wheelchair made Mother Zhu want to try one more time. "But you were still husband and wife for 5 years. He loved you so much, did so many reckless things for you. You." Chapter 25. Shen Xinyan let out a light laugh. "What does it matter how much he loved me? He still cheated in the end. Not only did he hide it from me, but his group of brothers also kept me in the dark. Perhaps you've been hiding it from me too." Back then, when Chu Yao fainted at Shen Xinyan's birthday party due to her pregnancy, it caused quite a stir. She simply didn't believe that Zhu's mother was unaware of it. Sure enough, Zhu's mother's expression stiffened slightly. Since Zhu Yushen and Shen Xinyan got married, Zhu's mother has been urging them to have a child as soon as possible, but one couldn't conceive due to health issues, and the other didn't want to because he couldn't bear to see his wife suffer. This infuriated Zhu's mother, who felt extremely uncomfortable every time she saw Shen Xinyan and naturally wouldn't give her a friendly look. So when she learned that Chu Yao was pregnant, Zhu's mother had long thrown all rules and propriety out the window. She even forgot that infidelity was an extremely shameful matter in the Zhu family, even though Mr. Zhu gave Mrs. Zhu the cold shoulder all day because of it. Even though Shen Xinyan secretly grieved over it every day, Mrs. Zhu simply didn't care at all. After all, nothing is more important than holding a grandchild. Shen Xinyan noticed Zhu's mother's reaction, a hint of mockery flashing in her eyes. So she even supports her own son's infidelity. Why bother trying to persuade someone like her, who is utterly disappointed and heartbroken by Zhu Yushen? "Mrs. Zhu, I hope you can tell him when you go back. He's not only tormenting himself, but also tormenting me. Does he think the harm he's caused me before isn't enough? Does he have to drive me to my death?" After saying this, she didn't wait for Mrs. Zhu's response and gestured to see her out. Zhu's mother had no choice but to stand up and leave. Hospital. Seeing no one behind Zhu's mother, the last glimmer of light in Zhu Yushen's eyes completely faded. He said nothing, merely waving his hand to signal his mother to leave. He picked up the wedding photo in his hand, tears of regret dripping onto Shen Xinyan's radiant, smiling face. In truth, he had known from the very beginning that if he hadn't been willing, Chu Yaoyao would never have had the chance to climb into his bed, yet he kept deluding himself, insisting that his actions were only because he couldn't bear to see Shen Xinyan go through childbirth. But his heart fell in love with Chu Yaoyao through repeated infidelities. How laughable, the man who once solemnly vowed to Shen Xinyan at their wedding, promising to remain loyal, love, and accompany her for the rest of his life, never betraying her, the man who swore he'd be struck by lightning if he ever loved someone else, the man who claimed he would only have Shen Xinyan as his woman. Yet in the end, he still cheated. He put down the photo, his lifeless eyes flickering before finally settling on the fruit knife beside him. That day, Shen Xinyan had asked him, "What if the heart gets dirty?" Now he could finally answer her, "That was to kill it. Ah, someone's dead." The night shift nurse screamed in panic upon witnessing the bloody scene in the ward. Mrs. Ju, who was approaching from a distance, suddenly dropped the thermos in her hand upon hearing the nurse's scream. She frantically pushed aside the nurse frozen at the doorway. After seeing the scene in the ward, her legs gave way, and she instantly fell to her knees. Inside the ward, Ju Yushan lay on the hospital bed as usual, and a fruit knife was deeply embedded in his heart. Upon learning of Ju Yushan's death, Shen Xinyan stood frozen in place for a long time, until a tear slid down from the corner of her eye. Only then did she finally snap out of it. Reaching out to wipe away that tear, she said nothing. Just picked up her suitcase and walked toward the door. After boarding the plane, Shen Xinyan turned her head to take one last look outside through the window. This place, the capital, she would never come back here again in her lifetime. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, so feel free to share your opinions. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more great stories. We'll see you in the next video.